Chapter 851. How did they chase us here? I can't sense their aura. Li Xianhuang cried out in shock. Fear was written all over his face. As a sovereign range lord, even he was frightened by the strange black insects. If Zhou Xuanji did not turn back, wouldn't they be controlled by the strange black insects without anyone knowing? At the thought of this, Li Xianhuang shuddered. Even when he faced the Sword Emperor, he did not feel this way. After all, when he faced the Sword Emperor, he was killed instantly by the Sword Emperor despite being accompanied by thousands of range lords. He had no time to feel fear. Xu Longhua glanced at these black insects and said softly, "Something's wrong. They seem to have something to ask of us. From the start to the end they haven't attacked. They can follow us closely, so they can definitely attack when we stop." Having heard this, Zhou Xuanji and Li Xianhuang calmed down. It was indeed so. After they stopped, the strange black insects stopped as well. They maintained a certain distance from them, and emitted a piercing sound, as though they were transmitting some kind of message. Zhou Xuanji reached out with his divine will and communicated with them telepathically. He was the sovereign of souls after all. Li Xianhuang and Xu Longhua could not compare to him in terms of telepathy. However, the strange black insects did not have souls, so he was not sure if they could communicate. A while later, the strange black insects suddenly flew toward another direction. After some distance, they stopped and turned to look at Zhou Xuanji and the others. It was obvious that they wanted Zhou Xuanji and the others to follow them. The three looked at each other and made a decision with their eyes. They followed the strange black insects together. The strange black insects continued ahead. Suddenly, they broke through the space-time tunnel and opened up a tunnel of absolute darkness. The three's hearts sank, but they did not stop. They took out their enchanted artifacts and spread out to illuminate the space within a radius of a few hundred meters. They advanced ahead without any obstruction. About an hour later, light finally appeared in front of them, and the three's eyes regained their focus. "What's next?" Li Xianhuang mumbled. He had never come to a cosmic space like this before, so he felt a little uneasy. Zhou Xuanji and Xu Longhua were calm, but they were more curious. After flying out of the light, they came to a dark blue universe filled with dazzling starlight. The stars here glowed with different colors, and it was as beautiful as a dream. The strange black insects continued onwards, and looking at where they were going, Zhou Xuanji and the others' expressions once again changed. A gigantic black tree stood in the center of the cosmos. Its height was impossible to estimate with the naked eye. Every leaf on it had stars and even suns of different sizes. It was an extremely spectacular sight. The most terrifying thing was that most of the stars had the aura of living beings. They were worlds with complete ecological laws. What tree is this? Divine tree of creation? Good fortune saint tree? Li Xianhuang asked with a frown. Xu Longhua shook his head, saying, "I am not too sure either, but it is definitely not a natural creation of the world, most likely an inauspicious object. We have to be careful. We do not know if those worlds were created by this tree, or if they were captured by this tree. If it was the latter, then it would be horrifying and horrifying." Even Zhou Xuanji and Li Xianhuang were fearful. What was the purpose of this tree's existence? Although they were doubtful, they still followed. Soon they arrived at the base of the huge black tree. The strange black insects scattered and burrowed into the leaves, quickly disappearing. The atmosphere became strange, and the entire universe fell silent. Zhou Xuanji and the other two looked around, and were prepared to fight at any moment. They began communicating telepathically to prevent others from hearing them. "Should we destroy this tree? No, we do not know how powerful this tree is. This is too uncanny. Should we retreat? Since we are already here, why should we retreat?" Just as they muttered, some of the leaves on the massive black tree began swaying. The Luan Peak appeared with the puppets. They walked over in the air, looking extremely strange. This time, they did not repeat the same sentence. Instead, they kept their mouths shut and looked ahead without blinking. More accurately, they were looking at Zhou Xuanji and the other two. Zhou Xuanji and the other two stood back to back, each looking in a different direction. They took out their enchanted artifacts and prepared for battle. The Life and Death Emperor sword appeared by Zhou Xuanji's side and spun on its own, which caught Li Xianhuang and Xu Longhua's attention. This sword, Li Xuanhuang's pupils contracted. He immediately guessed that it was a supreme treasure formed from the fusion of the All-Lives brush and the soul bead. He had wielded the All-Lives brush before. Although it was only for a short period of time, that power was still fresh in his mind. He did not expect this brat to refine two supreme treasures of the Kunlun origin court. He was too daring. Wasn't he afraid of the sovereign's punishment? It would definitely take time to refine these two supreme treasures. The sovereign had just left not long ago, which meant that the sovereign had tacitly approved of his actions. When Li Xianhuang thought of Zhou Tanhua obtaining the sovereign's inheritance, his heart was shrouded in a shadow. Although he was cooperating with Zhou Xuanji, he still had a strong ambition to compete for the sovereign's position. Look over there. Xu Longhua suddenly cried out, pointing at the massive black tree. Zhou Xuanji and Li Xianhuang immediately turned around. They saw a huge seed emerging from the main trunk of the massive black tree, rapidly expanding. In less than 10 breaths of time, the seed was tens of thousands of meters tall. It was crystal clear and looked like a peach. Its surface began to crack, and a bright red juice gushed out like blood. It was a ghastly sight. A horrifying aura leaked out of the seed. Even though they were far away, Zhou Xuanji and the other two could feel it. Sure enough, those insects lured us here as prey, Li Xianhuang said, gritting his teeth with a gloomy expression. He was the range lord of the sovereign range. How could he tolerate being tricked by insects? Zhou Xuanji and Xu Longhua's eyes turned cold. The three's eyes were locked on the bleeding seed. I must find you. I must find him. I have already found him. Luan Feng suddenly shouted, startling Zhou Xuanji and the other two. His murderous aura soared into the sky. His face was hideous, and he had a horrifying smile on his face. He charged straight at Zhou Xuanji and the other two. The puppets followed suit, each of them bursting out with their full speed. Just as they were about to reach Zhou Xuanji and the other two, they suddenly stopped. Their expressions froze, making the atmosphere even more gloomy. Zhou Xuanji, Li Xianhuang, and Xu Longhua kept their composure. They didn't act immediately. They didn't understand the current situation. Naturally, they couldn't act recklessly. Zhou Xuanji took out the Lesser Supreme Sword and asked in his heart, "Do you know about this tree?" Little Sovereign didn't answer immediately. After a few breaths of time, his exclamation suddenly rang in Zhou Xuanji's ears. The evil tree outside the courtyard. Wasn't this thing suppressed by the sovereigns? Every generation of sovereigns would strengthen the seal. How did you find it? His panicked tone made Zhou Xuanji's heart even heavier. After all, this guy was a sovereign. Even a sovereign would panic in the face of this tree. Chapter 852. What's the origin of the extra-court evil tree? Why does it need every sovereign to suppress it? Zhou Xuanji asked in his heart. Apart from fear, he was more curious about the extra-court evil tree. Why didn't Sovereign Wu Zhou mention this? How long has it been since the strange insects from the extra-court evil tree entered the Kunlun origin court? There must have been signs before this. How could Sovereign Wu Zhou not notice it? Could it be that Sovereign Wu Zhou deliberately left this disaster behind? When he thought of Sovereign Wu Zhou's previous actions, he felt that it was very possible. This guy was too conceited. He always wanted to let the future generations bear the burden. He called it testing the future generations. However, he forgot that back then, before he grew up, it was also thanks to the previous supreme being that protected everyone from above. But now, Sovereign Wu Zhou only served for a few 100 million years before leaving. He didn't fulfill his responsibilities as a sovereign at all. No one knows the origin of the extra-court evil tree, but it contains spirit-controlling evil insects. Any creature that is possessed by the spirit-controlling evil insects will lose their mind. All the spirit-controlling evil insects are controlled by the spirit-controlling evil mother. The spirit-controlling evil mother seems to be looking for something. The world on the tree is the spoils of war she found on the way. Little Sovereign's voice resounded in Zhou Xuanji's ear. His voice was trembling. He gritted his teeth and said, "Brat, leave quickly, lest you get into unnecessary trouble." That brat Wu Zhou not only didn't strengthen the seal, but he also released it. Zhou Xuanji's eyes flickered as he fell into deep thought. Immediately, He told Li Xianhuang and Xu Longhua what little sovereign had said, shocking them. The extra-court evil tree. Isn't that a legend? Does it really exist? I have only seen it in the Origin Court's History Pavilion. There are very few records. It only says that when the extra-court evil tree appears, the Kunlun Origin Court will be destroyed. There are too many legends like this. I thought they were all nonsense, Li Xianhuang sighed. His face was ugly. He already had the intention to retreat in his heart. This is an existence that even sovereigns fear. Xu Longhua said in a low voice, retreat? Their eyes were still locked on the huge seed. It had already bloomed. There seemed to be something hidden in the bud. They could vaguely see a figure through the petals. The spirit-controlling evil mother. That peerlessly horrifying aura grew more and more powerful, to the point where Zhou Xuanji and the other two's hearts palpitated. Zhou Xuanji said in a deep voice, let's retreat. But before we retreat, let's use our most powerful divine abilities. Even if we can't destroy this tree, we must at least severely injure it, and buy some time for the Kunlun Origin Court. All right. Li Xianhuang and Xu Longhua had no objections. The three of them circulated their divine power and prepared to attack. Zhou Xuanji activated the Sword Fusion Technique and Nine Soul Fusion Technique. He raised the Emperor Sword of Life and Death with his right hand, and his aura reached its peak. Beside him, Li Xianhuang and Xu Longhua were inwardly alarmed. How did this brat's aura suddenly soar so much? Could it be that he had been suppressing his aura? Zhou Xuanji slashed with the Great Awareness Divine Slash. Li Xianhuang and Xu Longhua also took action. Three extremely powerful divine powers gathered together and rushed towards the evil tree outside the courtyard with absolute power. There was a loud bang. The evil tree outside the courtyard shook violently as the three divine powers collided with it. Ah! A shrill cry came out from the flower bud. Countless leaves of the evil tree outside the courtyard began to shake, making a strange sound. The three of them glanced at each other, before disappearing from where they were at the same time. In the mortal plane, Xian Xianghua sat in the air, focusing on cultivation. More than 36 Dao flowers appeared on top of her head. Above the Dao flowers, there were 8 layers of purple clouds. She was trying to break through to the 9 vast heavens stage. Sovereign red dust was hovering at the side, watching quietly. She nodded slightly, showing a look of admiration as she mumbled, "It seems like he has become a lot stronger." She was confident in her teachings and inheritance, but every time Xian Xianghua's cultivation skyrocketed, it was definitely related to Zhou Xuanji. Thinking of Zhou Xuanji, she couldn't help but pinch her fingers to calculate. The next second, she furrowed her brow. She had always been able to calculate Zhou Xuanji's whereabouts. This was also the reason why she could often rescue Zhou Xuanji. But now, she couldn't calculate it at all. There was only one possibility. That was Zhou Xuanji had already left the Kunlun Origin Court. Where did he go? Sovereign Red Dust was puzzled. She knew Zhou Xuanji's recent plans. He was competing for the Sovereign's spirit nurturing range. There was no reason for him to leave the Kunlun Origin Court. He didn't have the ability to leave either. Could he have been attacked? Sovereign Red Dust immediately flew up to Xian Xianghua and said, "Don't move. This sovereign will calculate your husband's whereabouts through you." After that, she placed her right hand on Xian Xianghua's forehead. Within the dark realm, Zhou Xuanji and the other two were flying at an extremely high speed. The three looked gloomy, because countless spirit-controlling evil insects were chasing after them. The controlled cultivators were also following closely behind. Damn, that spirit-controlling evil mother should be here soon, Li Xianhuang said with gritted teeth. They could all sense the terrifying and oppressive aura behind them. At this moment he was extremely regretful. If he knew this, he wouldn't have followed the spirit-controlling evil insects. He looked at Zhou Xuanji and asked, "What should we do?" Zhou Xuanji was knowledgeable. He could recognize the evil tree outside the court, and he was also the sole sovereign. He might have a way to escape. "Keep going, don't slow down," Zhou Xuanji replied calmly. Li Xianhuang frowned, but had no other choice but to acquiesce. As Xu Longhua flew, he looked around in all directions, as though he was guarding against something. "Where are you going to escape to?" A cold old woman's voice came, and the three looked back in shock. A woman wrapped in withered leaves appeared above the swarm of spirit-controlling evil insects. She had a head full of black hair, and looked very young and graceful. But her face was very old, and her skin was shriveled like an old woman in her 60s or 70s. Spirit-controlling evil mother. Her eyes were cold, and tiny spirit-controlling evil insects were crawling all over her forehead. She looked extremely horrifying. Seeing her, Zhou Xuanji and the other two's hearts beat wildly. Such an spirit-controlling evil mother would make anyone tremble in fear. The spirit-controlling evil mother sped up, and was getting closer and closer to them. At this moment, a ball of red qi appeared in front of them. It charged toward Zhou Xuanji, and the other two with unstoppable momentum. Zhou Xuanji raised his brow, and immediately guessed the other party's identity. Mortal Sovereign, why are you running? Start the battle, or else you will lure her into the Kunlun Origin Court. Mortal Sovereign's cold voice came into their ears, and Li Xianhuang and Xu Longhua's expressions changed slightly. They recognized Mortal Sovereign too. Supreme crimson dust flew over their heads, heading straight for the evil mother of spirit manipulation. Zhou Xuanji turned around and charged with his sword. Li Xianhuang and Xu Longhua glanced at each other. Almost instantly, they reached a unanimous decision. Fight! The two moved like two meteors, and charged into the swarm of spirit-controlling evil insects. Boom! Mortal Qi exploded, sending countless spirit-controlling evil insects flying away. Mortal Sovereign and the spirit-controlling evil mother's palms clashed. Two extremely powerful forces clashed, shaking the dark universe. Chapter 853. Red Dust Sovereign was the most powerful cultivator below the sovereign, after all. Even Zhou Xuanji, who had become the sole sovereign, was far inferior to her. She and the evil spirit-controlling mother clashed, and it was hard to tell who had the upper hand. Both sides fought fiercely, surging with divine power. The spirit-controlling evil insects had no choice but to distance themselves from them. They vacated the void for tens of thousands of miles, allowing them to fight. Zhou Xuanji clashed with Luan Feng, while Li Xianhuang and Xu Longhua dealt with the other creatures controlled by the spirit-controlling evil insects. This dark space was desolate to begin with. It was like a world of living creatures, a place where they could fight to their heart's content. Facing a wheel-top cultivator, who could be considered half his master, Zhou Xuanji was very domineering. With the life and death emperor sword in hand, Luan Feng was forced to retreat step by step. The wheel pinnacle divine ability was also very powerful, but it was a pity that it was reflected by the inverse chaos divine ability. His destiny manifestation technique was completely ineffective against Zhou Xuanji, who had a sovereign soul. The life and death emperor sword blocked the wheel's summit, and Zhou Xuanji cast the destiny manifestation technique. Rolling thunder clouds gathered above the wheel's summit. A gigantic figure stood above the sea of clouds, wielding a gigantic sword as it slashed down. This was the death tribulation of the peak of chakra. Zhou Xuanji looked over, and realized that this figure was very similar to himself. Could it be that in the future, he would be the one to kill the Luan Pinnacle? Li Xianhuang and Xu Longhua also noticed the fate manifestation. This wasn't the first time they had seen it, so they knew what it meant. That's not Zhou Xuanji, it's Zhou Tanhua. Li Xianhuang said solemnly. His voice was so weak that no one could hear him. Xu Longhua also recognized Zhou Tanhua. Zhou Tanhua had left a deep impression on him that day at the Pulse Convergence Pagoda. Good lad, he can even kill a peak will expert. Isn't his bloodline inheritance too perfect? Xu Longhua muttered to himself, and a murderous glint flashed in his eyes. How could they allow such a prodigy to grow? Zhou Xuanji recognized that the mighty figure was his son, and he felt that it was quite funny. This kid won't be simple in the future. This posture was indeed his style. As for the hatred between him and Luan Ding, he didn't think too much about it. Although he was indebted to Luan Ding, he understood his son. Future grievances will be dealt with in the future. Facing the fate manifestation technique, even though Luan Feng was being controlled by the soul-controlling evil insect, he couldn't help but scream in agony. The killing tribulation pressure enveloped him, causing his soul and body to suffer extreme pain. He couldn't endure it at all. On this side, Zhou Xuanji had already suppressed the wheel summit, while Li Xianhuang and Xu Longhua had gained the upper hand. Only Autarch Crimson Dust was still locked in battle. Zhou Xuanji and the others did not look down on her because of this. Instead, they admired her even more. The evil spirit controlling mother's aura was simply too powerful. So powerful that it made their hearts palpitate. However, it was precisely in the face of such a powerful being that Crimson Dust's supremacy displayed an extremely domineering performance. And he was evenly matched with the evil spirit manipulation mother. Zhou Xuanji directly charged over. He performed the greatly divine suppressor art, creating hundreds of thousands of greatly clones to support the entire battlefield, while his true self charged toward the evil mother. In the state of the sword fusion technique, his strength had already reached the pinnacle of the origin fusion divine sovereign level. Even if he were to face the evil spirit manipulation mother, he would still be able to fight it head-on, not to mention that he had Supreme Crimson Dust's help. The two of them joined forces, and their aura surged. The evil mother spirit manipulation was forced to defend. Your strength has risen so quickly, Autarch Crimson Dust said softly, the corners of his lips curling up slightly. He was clearly in a very good mood. She liked this kind of Zhou Xuanji. Back then, when she fell in love with him, he was far stronger than Zhou Xuanji. So she could not bear to see Zhou Xuanji weaker than her. In her heart, Zhou Xuanji was indomitable and fearless. No matter what kind of predicament he faced, he could deal with it calmly. Zhou Xuanji smiled and said, "It's okay, but I still can't beat you." These words were spoken from the bottom of his heart. Fighting alongside Autarch Crimson Dust, at such a close distance, he could feel her vast aura. With such an aura, no wonder she was fearless in the Kunlun origin court. Without Sovereign Wu Zhou, she was the sovereign. The greatly avatar, Li Xianhuang, and Xu Longhua killed the spirit-controlling evil insect one after another. Li Xianhuang and Xu Longhua soon became invincible. They began to watch the battle between Zhou Xuanji, Autarch Crimson Dust, and the evil mother. The more they watched, the more shocked they became. They were not surprised by Autarch Crimson Dust's power. What surprised them was Zhou Xuanji. His sword's way and strange divine abilities were really unpredictable. The evil mother spirit manipulation evil insect often couldn't dodge in time. "I will kill you." The evil mother spirit manipulation evil insect suddenly let out a shrill cry. A gust of wind came from the darkness, which shocked everyone. Zhou Xuanji looked over and saw the evil tree outside the courtyard, flying toward them with a majestic momentum, as though it was going to break through all the universes. Autarch Crimson Dust's expression changed slightly. Suddenly, he grabbed Zhou Xuanji's right shoulder, and the two disappeared. Li Xianhuang and Xu Longhua were stunned. Escaped? They immediately came back to their senses. Cursing in their hearts, they quickly retreated. On the other side, Zhou Xuanji and Autarch Crimson Dust traveled through the mortal qi. Zhou Xuanji didn't even need to fly with divine energy. He felt that Autarch Crimson Dust was pushing him forward. He asked curiously, "What channel is this?" He felt that the mortal qi here was like a channel of time and space. It was very mysterious. The mortal spacetime is a divine ability that I created. It's not bound by the rules of time and space. I don't think the evil mother spirit manipulation evil insect will find this place. Autarch Crimson Dust replied. Autarch Crimson Dust replied in a proud tone. Zhou Xuanji fell into deep thought. Can I create such a channel with my soul source? You have already become the soul sovereign. If you want to leave the Kunlun origin court in the future, you must take me with you. I guess Nianxing might have gone outside the court. Autarch Crimson Dust changed the topic and said meaningfully. She stayed in the Kunlun origin court to wait for Zhou Xuanji. Except for Zhou Xuanji, she had nothing else to miss. Zhou Xuanji asked, "You can already leave the Kunlun origin court? Isn't that an ability only great sovereigns have?" "Of course. When you absorb 10 more origin rules, you can do it too," Autarch Crimson Dust replied. Autarch Crimson Dust replied, his eyes filled with anticipation. No matter how long it had been, she still couldn't give up divine Nianxing. Zhou Xuanji calmly said, "If I become the sovereign, I won't leave the Kunlun origin court soon. But I can promise you that I will leave sooner or later." Autarch Crimson Dust nodded and said no more. The two fell into silence. About the time it takes to burn half an incense stick had passed. They returned to the Kunlun origin court. The evil mother's spirit manipulation didn't chase after them. Li Xianhuang and Xu Longhua were nowhere to be seen. Zhou Xuanji didn't ask about their whereabouts. After all, they were acquaintances. When can Xian Xianghua come back to me? Zhou Xuanji stopped and asked Autark Crimson Dust. Autark Crimson Dust snorted and said, "Is there such a hurry? When she becomes an origin fusion divine lord, I will let her go back. At that time, she can share the pressure for you and the Emperor Sword divine range." Without waiting for Zhou Xuanji to speak again, she directly turned into a wisp of mortal qi and dissipated. Zhou Xuanji stayed in place, shaking his head and laughing. Just as he was about to leave, he suddenly furrowed his brow. He looked into the depths of the universe and saw a figure in the void boundary looking at him. Chapter 854. The figure standing in the void boundary had disheveled hair and ragged clothes. His head was slightly lowered, revealing only his bloodshot right eye. He stared fixedly at Zhou Xuanji, as though there was a deep hatred in his heart. Zhou Xuanji sized him up and was curious. Who is this guy? His aura was very strong, and he had the cultivation of origin fusion divine Lord Wu Ming. However, it didn't look right. It was as if he had been possessed by a spirit-controlling evil insect. Zhou Xuanji raised his hand suddenly with a sharp look in his eyes. Puchi! The long-haired man's chest was pierced through, and black blood spurted out from his back. However, no weapon could be seen throughout the entire process. The vanishing divine sword. Shadowless, formless, and soundless. The long-haired man did not die because of this, nor did he fly into a rage. He only twisted his neck and continued to stare at Zhou Xuanji from afar. Zhou Xuanji laughed and waved his right hand. The invincible sword pierced through the man's body from behind and flew in front of Zhou Xuanji. He had used the world internalization, but he didn't absorb the divine power of the man with the loose hair. It was really strange. Could it be that this fellow's divine power is different from others? Zhou Xuanji raised his eyebrows and immediately flew towards the disheveled man. As soon as he saw him flying over, the long-haired man immediately fled. How could Zhou Xuanji let him escape? However, after coming to the void boundary, Zhou Xuanji could no longer sense his aura. Strange, why did it suddenly disappear? Zhou Xuanji mumbled. He first thought of the red dust passageway. Could it be that the long-haired man also grasped some sort of special rule and had already opened up a space-time passageway that belonged solely to him? Other than that, he couldn't think of any other reason. If he moved in the Kunlun origin court, he would definitely leave behind traces of aura and soul fluctuations. Zhou Xuanji shook his head and flew toward the Emperor Sword divine range. The Kunlun origin court had a lot of things to deal with recently, so he was too lazy to think about it. He had just dealt with the evil spirit-controlling mother, so he didn't want to cause any more trouble. In any case, the Kunlun origin court's range masters had been resurrected, so it was time to let them take action. After returning to the Emperor Sword divine range, Zhou Xuanji did not disturb the others. He returned to the cultivation hall and continued his seclusion. However, this trip had changed his opinion of Zhou Tanhua. Therefore, he began to carefully observe his son in addition to his cultivation. Zhou Tanhua's temperament had become more and more stable with the improvement of his cultivation. Although he still looked like a teenager, he appeared very mature. He didn't have Zhou Xuanji's high-spirited spirit, nor did he feel inferior. He was always thinking alone, and no one knew what he was thinking. When I leave in the future, I can be at ease leaving the Emperor Sword divine range to him. Zhou Xuanji said with a satisfied smile. Compared to Zhou Tanhua, his elder sister Zhou Shaoxian seemed to never grow up. She always gave him a headache. Meanwhile, Zhou Tanhua sat by the lake and looked at the lake. He rested his chin on his right hand as he racked his brains. He was thinking about his sword path. He wanted to create his own sword Dao and not copy his father's path. Somehow he seemed to have grasped something, but he couldn't clearly capture it. This feeling drove him crazy. The more he thought about it, the more he wanted it. Therefore, his mood began to calm down. The sword that was stuck in the soil beside him suddenly came out of its sheath and hovered above his head. The grass beneath him burst into light and spread out in a circle. He began comprehending the Tao. Evil Sky Divine Range Sovereign Palace. Beast Sovereign was sitting on the main seat, looking at the figure in the palace. It was the disheveled man, who had been staring at Zhou Xuanji before. His face was still covered by his grass-like hair, only revealing a pair of eyes. "Are you sure?" Beast Sovereign asked in a cold voice with a cold face. The disheveled man said with a strange smile. "Yes, Zhou Xuanji has power that surpasses the sovereign." Hearing this, Beast Sovereign furrowed his brow and fell into silence. Such an existence has appeared in the Kunlun Origin Court. If he doesn't die, he will definitely become a great sovereign. You either find a way to eradicate him and seize his opportunity, or leave the Kunlun Origin Court and go to another court realm to make a comeback. The disheveled man said leisurely. The disheveled man said slowly and closed his eyes. After a long while, Beast Sovereign asked, "What are the other court realms like?" The disheveled man opened his eyes and replied with a smile. "It's more exciting than the Kunlun Origin Court. The sovereigns of the Kunlun Origin Court are opening up court realms outside, constantly creating. The outside world is far more exciting than the Kunlun Origin Court. Of course, it's also more dangerous than the Kunlun Origin Court. All the sovereigns are chasing after a supreme treasure. Once you get that supreme treasure, you can command all the sovereigns and become a supreme ruler." Beast Sovereign furrowed his brow and asked, "Why can you command all the sovereigns?" The sovereigns were the strongest experts of an era. How could they be controlled by a supreme treasure? The disheveled man replied, "Everything has a starting point. The same is true for the origin of the sovereigns. In the vast court realms, there are 3 supreme opportunities. One of them is the sovereign divine power. Once you grasp the sovereign divine power, all the sovereigns must surrender. Otherwise, they will turn into ashes. After all, the establishment of the sovereigns is derived from the 3,000 origin rules. Rules can make the sovereigns, but they can also overthrow the sovereigns." Beast Sovereign's eyes widened. He was shocked by the other party's words. His eyes lit up with the fire of hope. He curiously asked, "Apart from the sovereign divine power, what are the other 2 great opportunities and supreme treasures?" The disheveled man shook his head and replied, "No one knows." His tone was a little sad. He couldn't tell the vicissitudes of life outside the court. Many supremes had risked their lives for the sake of the 3 supreme fortuitous encounters. The sovereign divine power alone was enough to make the sovereigns fight to the death. If the other 2 supreme opportunities appeared, what kind of scene would it be? All right, this sovereign has decided to go outside the court. But before that, an eye for an eye. An eye for an eye. The corner of Beast Sovereign's mouth rose as he declared with a murderous smile. After 3 years, Zhou Xuanji sent Chang Xian to inquire about the news. Li Xianhuang and Xu Longhua had returned. The spirit-controlling evil insects had strangely disappeared. The creatures controlled by them were also nowhere to be seen. It was as if they had evaporated. This matter didn't cause too much of a stir in the Kunlun Origin Court. The main theme was still the sovereign list. The Qinxiong Divine Range, which had always been low-key, suddenly made a high-profile announcement. They wanted to gather all the powerful cultivators and geniuses on the sovereign list in one place to fight for the position of the new sovereign. The Qinxiong Divine Range was also a sovereign divine range. Their words carried a lot of weight. As soon as this statement came out, many creatures expressed their support. The emergence of the sovereign list had caused powerful cultivators and geniuses to fight everywhere. Although it was very lively, it would also make all living beings bored after a long time. The Qinxiong Divine Range also sent invitations to everyone on the sovereign list to fight in the universe area, at the center of the Kunlun Origin Court. Zhou Xuanji took the invitation from Chang Xian's hand and asked with a faint smile, "Are there any people from the Qinxiong Divine Range on the sovereign list?" Chang Xian nodded and replied, "Yes, there are about 800 of them. All of them are above the 5 vast heavens realm, although they are not as many as the super divine ranges. Each and every one of them is a powerful existence. The highest ranked is Chu Jing, who is ranked 4th on the sovereign list. He broke through to the Origin Fusion Divine Lord 8 comprehensions 200 years ago." Chapter 855. There are so few people. No wonder they did this. Zhou Xuanji shook his head and said disdainfully. He did not have a deep impression of the Qianxiong divine range. Back then at the Meridian Gathering Tower, the range lord of the Qianxiong divine range, Chu Xingquang, was very low-key and did not fight for anything. Facing the Sword Emperor, he didn't dare to ask for the position of Heavenly King of the Origin Court. Now that things were peaceful, he was eyeing the position of an exalted exalt. How thick-skinned, Chang Xian whispered. Master, if most of the people on the sovereign list go, will you go? Now Zhou Xuanji was ranked first on the sovereign list. If he did not go, this battle would become a joke, and he would offend the Qianxiong divine range. Not going, Zhou Xuanji said without hesitation. He was not afraid of the hidden hero divine range. Although the Emperor Sword divine range was weak, the Tianyi divine range still supported them. Among the sovereign divine ranges, the Tianyi divine range was one of the top 3, slightly stronger than the Qianxiong divine range. Chang Xian nodded. She didn't try to persuade Zhou Xuanji, but obediently retreated, not wanting to disturb his cultivation. Zhou Xuanji continued to comprehend the law of darkness, and did not think too much. On the other side, the Qianxiong divine range had set up a battlefield in the center of the Kunlun Origin Court. Most of the rankers went to participate. After all, this battle was also a chance for them to showcase themselves. Of course, the reputation of the hidden hero divine range was also a big factor. The Emperor Sword divine range did not have any veins sealed, so many disciples wanted to take a look. Zhou Xuanji did not stop them. However, he didn't expect the Emperor Sword divine range to shine in the sovereign meet. To be precise, it was Zhou Tanhua. Zhou Tanhua and a group of Emperor Sword divine range disciples were originally there to watch the show. But because Zhou Xuanji didn't come, they were ridiculed a lot. Out of indignation, Zhou Tanhua joined the battle and shone brilliantly by relying on his swordsmanship and exterminating divine eyes. In just a few years, the entire Kunlun Origin Court knew of Zhou Tanhua. After all, his father was Zhou Xuanji, who ranked first on the sovereign list, and he himself had received the sovereign's inheritance. How could he not soar into the sky after displaying his strength? Zhou Xuanji witnessed Zhou Tanhua's performance through the 10,000 Worlds Piercer. He was very satisfied. This kid had his own style. On Zhou Tanhua's way back, he had been keeping an eye on him to prevent any mighty experts from targeting Zhou Tanhua. During this period, there were indeed people who wanted to attack Zhou Xuanji, but all of them disappeared into thin air, undetected by Zhou Tanhua. It was not Zhou Xuanji who did it. Strange, who was protecting him? Could it be Supreme Wu Zhou? Zhou Xuanji rubbed his chin in thought. Among the experts who wanted to attack Zhou Tanhua, there were many Origin Fusion Divine Lords. But they still disappeared without anyone noticing. It could be seen that the attacker was very strong. At least he was stronger than Zhou Xuanji, because he could not pinpoint his opponent's position at all. In the end, Zhou Tanhua and the others came back safe and sound. Zhou Xuanji didn't ask Zhou Tanhua. He continued to cultivate in the cultivation palace. As Zhou Xuanji expected, the one who benefited the most from this battle was Chu Jing from the Qianxiong divine range. He had used his absolute strength to suppress the entire audience, and all the spectators were convinced. He only defeated his enemies, not killed them. He didn't rely on any helpers and fought alone. Now the clamor for him to become the sovereign was very loud. In the eyes of everyone, he only needed to defeat Zhou Xuanji to prove that he was the first on the sovereign list. Zhou Xuanji's #1 position wasn't just for show. Putting aside his fame, he wasn't strong enough to be #1 on the sovereign list. For a time, the Kunlun Origin Court was in turmoil. The matter of the sovereign was also getting more and more intense. Sovereign Wu Zhou left again. The Kunlun Origin Court urgently needed a new sovereign. On this day, the cultivation palace shook violently. The entire mountain was submerged in black clouds, making it look like a demonic domain. Jiang Shui, Chang Xian, Zhou Tanhua, Zhou Shaoxian, Daoya Old Man, Ren Niming, and the others gathered. All of them looked terrified. They felt an extremely oppressive aura, which almost suffocated them. Dark Law. What a powerful aura. Is Father breaking through, or is there an enemy? Zhou Shaoxian asked nervously. This dark aura made her feel uneasy. Everyone mistakenly thought that the enemy had arrived. Even Daoya Old Man and Xian Daoya couldn't divine it. The black clouds coiled around the mountain, forming a spectacular black tornado that swept across the sky with great momentum. Thunder and lightning roared along with it. Everyone looked up and saw the black clouds condensing into a mighty figure. It was Zhou Xuanji. They didn't breathe a sigh of relief. On the contrary, they became even more nervous. After all, the Sword Emperor and Zhou Fa, who had appeared before, looked exactly the same as Zhou Xuanji. Darkness complete. Zhou Xuanji's voice resounded as the majestic black clouds directly exploded, restoring peace and tranquility. Next, his figure appeared above the cultivation palace. His silver hair had turned black, even darker than before. There was a black line at the edge of his purple pupils, which made him look a little more evil. He looked down. Everyone felt a stinging pain in their eyes. They lowered their heads subconsciously. "I'm just breaking through." "Everyone disperse," Zhou Xuanji said with a faint smile. Zhou Xuanji said with a faint smile. After speaking, he entered the cultivation palace. He had completely mastered the dark law. He was one step closer to the great sovereign realm. Everyone looked at each other and could only leave. Master has become stronger again. Judging from the momentum just now, it must be a big breakthrough. At this rate, guess how long it will take for him to become the sovereign? I'm not sure. The sovereign might not be in the same realm. We have to work harder too. We can't be left further and further behind by Master. At the peak of the Origin Court, above the sea of clouds, one could overlook the magnificent scenery of the divine ranges. The evil spirit controlling mother suddenly appeared. She stood on top of the clouds. Evil spirit controlling insects emerged from behind her and surrounded her. Kunlun Origin Court. I'm finally back. Wu Zhou, you brat, you made a mistake. Now the Kunlun Origin Court will become my hunting ground. The corners of her mouth curled up as she muttered to herself. Her smile was extremely sinister. She raised her right hand, and countless spirit-controlling evil insects flew out from her sleeves. Spatial cracks appeared behind her as powerful cultivators with powerful auras stepped out. There were hundreds of them, including the Wheel Summit. The Wheel Summit looked so mediocre among them. Every one of these puppets looked extraordinary, especially the leader. He was hundreds of meters tall, and held a golden staff in his hand. He wore a golden red scale armor, and a crown with horns on his head. His eyes were pitch black and looked extremely domineering. He stood there as though he could break through the peak of the Kunlun Origin Court. The other puppets instinctively distanced themselves from him. "Kill," the evil mother said softly. The evil mother spirit controller said softly. As soon as it said that, the hundreds of powerful puppets behind it disappeared at the same time. Boom! A horrifying explosion came from below. Fiery light shone on the old face of the evil mother. She narrowed her eyes and mumbled, "Sovereign Heaven, I will destroy everything you care about. Whether you are alive or not, I will make you regret it." After she finished speaking, her face became extremely sinister. She turned into countless spirit-controlling evil insects and flew in all directions. Chapter 856. The majestic divine range was like a pillar that maintained the stability of the universe in the Kunlun universe. It stood tall and immortal. Boom! A huge fireball that was as large as the sun collided with this divine vein, directly breaking it in half. This scene was extremely shocking. Not only this divine range, but the surrounding divine ranges were also attacked and collapsed one after another. The Kunlun Origin Court once again faced a great calamity. Zhou Xuanji, who was far away in the Emperor Sword divine range, saw this scene. He couldn't help but frown, but he wasn't too shocked in his heart. The evil mother controlling spirit was really coming. Just what was the background of those puppets? Why were they all so ridiculously powerful? Among them, there were a dozen creatures whose auras were not inferior to mortal sovereign. He couldn't help but think of the battles with the heroes of the past and present in the northern wilderness region. Could it be that these puppets were powerful cultivators from different eras? Like the Chakra Summit, they were refined into puppets by the evil mother controlling spirit? This was the only possibility. Apart from the Chakra Summit, it was his first time seeing other powerful cultivators. The Kunlun Origin Court is going to be chaotic again. Zhou Xuanji muttered to himself before slowly closing his eyes. He was busy trying to break through to Origin Fusion Divine Lord Jiuming. As long as the war didn't affect the Emperor Sword Divine range, he couldn't be bothered. The Kunlun Origin Court wasn't that weak. The Evil Mother controlling spirit wasn't as powerful as the Sword Emperor. When the Evil Mother controlling spirit launched its attack, all the Sovereign Divine ranges and Super Divine ranges went to support it. A super war swept through the Kunlun Origin Court. However, things didn't go as Zhou Xuanji wished. He didn't look for trouble with the Evil Mother controlling spirit. But the Evil Mother controlling spirit had its eyes on him. A burly figure holding a golden staff stepped forward in the air. His long hair danced in the wind, and his golden-red scale armor flickered with a chilling radiance. Wherever he passed, the space twisted like ripples on the surface of a lake. Boom! A god whose figure wasn't any weaker than the man with the golden staff suddenly appeared and slammed into him from the side. The man with the golden staff didn't move at all. He was like the divine mountain of creation that would never move. Old ancestor, wake up! The man with the golden staff roared furiously. His arms were bare, and he was wearing a dark purple armor. A pair of bronze wings grew on his back. His face looked somewhat similar to the man with the golden staff. Hearing his call, the man with the golden staff waved the giant staff in his hand. In an instant, the violent golden divine power swept out like an ocean and collided head-on with deity Qingyu, causing him to vomit blood and fly backward. From the beginning to the end, the man with the golden staff did not stop. Innumerable Emperor Sword Divine Range disciples flew out from the Divine Range. They spread out and formed a giant net, waiting for the enemy to arrive. Their leader was Barbaric Ultimate God. He was still in his black cat form, standing on Chongming Demon Monarch's right shoulder, while the little black snake was on his left shoulder. Listen to my command, prepare for battle. Barbaric Ultimate God shouted in high spirits. Millions of elite disciples unsheathed their swords at the same time. The sound of swords being unsheathed was loud and clear. The little black snake could not help but spit. Who do you think you are? Who allowed you to give orders? Barbaric Ultimate God glared at him and snorted. Don't think that you can insult this god, just because you are the mascot of Emperor Sword Divine Range. Back then, if it weren't for my guidance, how could Zhou Xuanji have survived the Great Elimination? If he had died, you wouldn't be here today. The little black snake was dismissive, while Chongming Demon Monarch found it funny and didn't participate in the bickering. At this time, Zhou Tianhua suddenly flew past them and flew to the forefront. Young master! Be careful, young master, the opponent is very strong. You can't act recklessly. Stop the young master. What does the young master want to do? Don't let anything happen to the young master. The disciples cried out in alarm and followed suit, wanting to stop Zhou Tianhua. Zhou Tianhua directly unsheathed his sword. His speed suddenly increased as he rushed toward the man with the golden staff without hesitation. Clang! The golden staff and the sword collided. Zhou Tianhua only felt a sharp pain in his palm. His pupils suddenly shrank as he saw the man with the golden staff appear in front of him. So fast! He was secretly shocked. He didn't dare to take it lightly anymore. Just as he was about to make his next move, the man with the golden staff grabbed him with one hand. Zhou Tianhua suddenly turned into white smoke and disappeared in the giant hand. The man with the golden staff didn't have any consciousness and didn't have any emotional fluctuations. Zhou Tianhua appeared behind the man with the golden staff out of thin air, and thousands of silver clones flew out of his body. Greatly doppelgangers. He quickly waved his sword, and countless sword energies shot out. The same was true for his greatly doppelgangers. Great awareness divine slash. The man with the golden staff was submerged by countless sword energies. The sword energies exploded and turned into a sea of fog. Zhou Tianhua's eyes turned cold as he followed suit. As soon as he disappeared, the golden staff came out of the sea of fog and just happened to pass by him. He moved to the front of the Emperor Sword Divine Range and heaved a sigh of relief. That was close. The man with the golden staff turned to look at him, and his empty eyes made him shudder with fear. I'm still not strong enough, Zhou Tianhua thought to himself, but there was no fear in his eyes. He is my ancestor. He used to be the previous Origin Court War God. Everyone calls him Heartless War God. His strength surpasses Origin Fusion Divine Lord. Don't fight him head-on. Otherwise, you will suffer heavy losses. Don't look for trouble with our Qinxiong Divine Range. Deity Qingyu flew over and said in a deep voice. His voice clearly reached the ears of all the disciples of the Emperor Sword Divine Range. Origin Court War God surpasses Origin Fusion Divine Lord. Everyone was shocked. At this time, Heartless War God suddenly charged at the Emperor Sword Divine Range with unstoppable momentum. Deity Qingyu immediately cast his divine ability, and a giant bronze bell appeared in front of the Emperor Sword Divine Range. Bang! The giant bronze bell was directly smashed into pieces. Heartless War God's speed didn't decrease. He was about to hit the disciples. Puffed! Heartless War God's throat was pierced, and his figure came to a stop. Heartless War God? It reminds me of an old friend. Zhou Xuanji's chuckle came from the divine range as sword shadows flew out from the divine range, converging into a river of swords. His sleeves fluttered in the wind as he walked over. His posture looked so elegant. The life and death Emperor sword levitated beside him, radiating a cold black and white radiance. Seeing Zhou Xuanji, all the disciples of the Emperor Sword Divine Range heaved a sigh of relief. In their hearts, Zhou Xuanji was invincible. Even if his cultivation wasn't as high as the enemy's, he could turn any danger into safety. Deity Qingyu was stunned. He was shocked by Zhou Xuanji's attack. He didn't even see Zhou Xuanji's divine ability clearly. Such a feeling made him revere Zhou Xuanji. When Heartless War God saw Zhou Xuanji, he immediately let out a furious roar. His face turned sinister. The evil mother-controlling spirit gave him the order to kill Zhou Xuanji. He held the golden staff with both hands and swung it at Zhou Xuanji with all his might. The surging divine energy transformed into countless dragons and tigers that charged forward, stepping on billions of lightning bolts. It was majestic and extremely oppressive. Zhou Xuanji smiled. The non-existence legendary sword moved again and attacked Heartless War God crazily. Pft, pft, pft. Heartless War God was like a target, and he was constantly being attacked. Chapter 857. In the eyes of the others, the Heartless War God twisted and turned crazily. The wounds on his body increased, and in a short while, they were densely packed. Deity Qingyu was horrified. He knew Zhou Xuanji, the top cultivator on the sovereign list. But wasn't this guy a prodigy? It was already incredible that he had reached the Origin Fusion Divine Sovereign Realm before the age of 2000. Now, he actually had strength that surpassed the Heartless War God. Didn't that mean that Zhou Xuanji was really qualified to become the sovereign? The disciples of Emperor Sword Divine Range were extremely excited. The Heartless War God's aura was too strong, so strong that it made them feel intimidated. But with Zhou Xuanji's appearance, the Heartless War God was nothing. What did this mean? This meant that their ancestor had surpassed the Origin Court War God. What was the status of Origin Court War God? The number one person below Supreme Being. How could the Emperor Sword Divine Range disciples not be excited? Zhou Tanhua was also very excited. After all, he had fought against the Heartless War God and knew how terrifying he was. Now that he saw the Heartless War God being beaten to the point where he couldn't even resist, his heart was filled with emotions. His father's strength was truly unfathomable. Every time he thought that his cultivation had made a great leap, it was nothing compared to his father's. He did not feel defeated. Instead, he was full of fighting spirit. Heartless Battle God roared. He tried his best to struggle, but the speed of the vanishing god sword was too fast. He couldn't use any techniques at all. The most important thing was that the invincible divine sword was invisible and formless. The Heartless War God couldn't catch it at all. He couldn't even sense where it was. Although being controlled by the spirit manipulation demonic insect would make one fearless, it would also cause one to lose one's judgment in battle. There are pros and cons. Zhou Xuanji walked on the river of swords and sized up the Heartless War God. For some reason, he felt that the Heartless War God was similar to the Heartless Emperor Baihao Yisan. In terms of appearance, the two of them were worlds apart. However, he always felt that the two of them were somewhat similar. Could it be that Bai Hao Isin had obtained the Heartless War God's inheritance? Just as he was thinking, the Heartless God of War roared again. His body exploded, turning into wisps of green smoke that dissipated. The invincible godly sword could no longer hurt him, let alone track him down. Interesting. Zhou Xuanji smiled. Numerous greatly avatars flew out from his body and charged toward the green smoke formed by the Heartless War God. His greatly doppelganger was much stronger than Zhou Tanhua. Zhou Tanhua's eyes lit up, and his emotions surged like the waves of the sea. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, the clones of the Dali dynasty waved their swords to extinguish the wisps of green smoke, forcing the Heartless God of War to roar in agony. Hee kid, you've actually become stronger again. An eerie laughter rang out. Everyone turned their heads and saw the evil mother descending from above. Its robes and withered hair danced in the wind. Her peerlessly horrifying aura silenced the entire Kunlun cosmos. Everyone was frightened by her aura and could not move, feeling a chill in their hearts. Deity Qingyu was stunned. He looked at the evil mother spirit controller in fear. This aura, Deity Qingyu suddenly recalled the fear he felt when he faced the Sword Emperor. Could it be that this demonic woman had strength comparable to a supreme being? The more he thought about it, the more afraid he became. Supreme Wu Zhou had just left, and now the Kunlun Origin Court was facing such a calamity. He could not help but let his imagination run wild. Could it be that Supreme Wu Zhou had left because there was an enemy he couldn't defeat? Otherwise, why would Supreme Wu Zhou be in such a hurry? Thinking of this, Deity Qingyu could not help but feel despair. At this moment, it was not just the Emperor Sword Divine Range. Battles were happening everywhere in the Kunlun Origin Court. Countless spirit-controlling evil insects were capturing living beings everywhere. Any living being that they attached themselves to would be turned into puppets. The evil mother spirit controller's subordinates were increasing rapidly, and the living beings in the Kunlun Origin Court were also decreasing. The Kunlun Origin Court was in a precarious situation. Evil mother spirit controller, you are really difficult to deal with. What do you want to do? Replace the Kunlun Origin Court? Zhou Xuanji looked up at the evil mother spirit controller and asked with a smile. He looked calm on the surface, but his heart was heavy. Although he had comprehended the dark rule, there was still a huge gap between him and the evil mother spirit controller. At least, facing the evil mother spirit controller, Zhou Xuanji felt immense pressure. The evil mother controlling spirit said contemptuously, "The one who offended this seat is a sovereign of your Kunlun Origin Court. This seat destroyed the Kunlun Origin Court to take revenge on him. You pitiful creatures should hate him." After that, she raised her hand and slapped Zhou Xuanji. Boom! Zhou Xuanji's sovereign divine energy burst out and blocked the wind from her palm. But the disciples below were all blown away. The majestic Emperor Sword Divine Range shook violently. The greatly avatars dissipated, and the Heartless War God regathered his body. The situation of the battle was reversed in an instant. The Emperor Sword Divine Range was in a critical situation. God Qingyu looked at the Heartless War God, and then at the evil mother spirit controller. Gnashing his teeth, he turned around and fled. He had no friendship with the Emperor Sword Divine Range. This trip was just for the reputation of the Qinxiong Divine Range. But the enemy was too powerful. He had no choice but to retreat. Zhou Xuanji endured the wind from the evil mother spirit controller's palm. His brows were tightly knitted as he kept thinking of countermeasures. Swoosh! A red arrow tore through the universe and flew toward him. The evil mother spirit controller raised her left hand and caught the arrow with two of her fingers. She glanced over and saw waves of red dust chi sweeping toward her like a vast ocean. Sovereign Hong Chun was in the middle of it. The domineering aura of a sovereign was on full display. She looked at the evil mother spirit controller disdainfully and said with a proud smile, "A bug like you wants to destroy the Kunlun Origin Court. Do you think you are a sovereign?" The evil mother spirit controller's face darkened. Her eyes were filled with murderous intent. Zhou Xuanji waved his right hand and sent everyone back to the Emperor Sword Divine Range. At the same time, he activated the Divine Range Guardian Array, leaving him alone in the universe. "Seems like we still have to fight together," Zhou Xuanji said with a smile. With the arrival of Sovereign Hongchen, the pressure on him was greatly reduced. Not only you. A familiar voice came. It was Li Xianhuang. A giant golden gate that was tens of thousands of meters tall appeared out of nowhere. Li Xianhuang stepped out with his giant halberd, followed by Yuan Rizhen, Shu Longhua, and the powerhouses of the Sovereign Emperor Divine Range. There were also a few giant figures inside the gate. It was like a miracle. The evil Mother Spirit Controller's face darkened. A look of shock flashed in her eyes. You didn't expect this, right? It's not that the Kunlun Origin Court is getting weaker with each generation, but each generation is stronger than the last. Although the Kunlun Origin Court was almost destroyed, that was against the sovereign. It's more than enough to deal with you, Sovereign Hongchen said with a mocking smile. The sea of red dust transformed into countless phoenixes that soared around recklessly. It's more than enough to deal with you. Li Xianhuang raised his halberd and pointed it at the evil Mother Spirit Controller, shouting, You dare to touch the Kunlun Origin Court. You must be tired of living. Don't even think about escaping today. As soon as he spoke, the Kunlun universe fluctuated like an illusion. Zhou Xuanji keenly sensed that the surrounding space was filled with a strange energy. When the space-time rules approached it, they froze immediately. It was very strange. Li Xianhuang was freezing the universe space to prevent the evil Mother Spirit Controller from escaping. He narrowed his eyes. His gaze was a little cold. It was unknown whether it was intentional or not. But even the Emperor Sword Divine Range was frozen. Chapter 858. With Li Xianhuang's order, the powerful cultivators of the Sovereign Emperor Divine Range surrounded the evil mother. The evil Mother Spirit Controller did not panic, nor did she go berserk. She scanned her surroundings and prepared for battle. Kill! Li Xianhuang roared. In an instant, a powerful radiance burst out, dazzling the divine wills of all living beings in the divine range. Over 1,000 figures exuding powerful auras began to surround and attack the evil spirit mother. Zhou Xuanji watched quietly. He was shocked by the power of the Sovereign Emperor Divine Range. All of them were Origin Fusion Divine Lords. There were more than 200 cultivators who were stronger than level 5. Back in the Meridian Connection Tower, he had not seen such a powerful force. Boom, boom, boom. The sound of explosions continued. The powerful cultivators of the Sovereign Emperor Divine Range unleashed their divine abilities, forcing the evil mother to defend with its own divine energy. Sovereign Hongchen was also observing, and did not make a move. She wanted to see if the Sovereign Emperor Divine Range could kill the evil mother. Yuan Rizhen bellowed as his entire body was engulfed in dark red flames. 6 arms grew out of his body, each holding a divine weapon. His long hair turned into flames and burned fiercely. The intensity of the flames rose rapidly and condensed into a dark red sun that hung above his head. He charged forward, passing through the divine ability bombardment, and crashed into the evil mother. The evil mother blocked him with a palm and said with a mocking smile, So it's you. Your body is still in my hands. Do you miss it? Yuan Rizhen was also an Origin Court war god in his previous life, and he died in the hands of the evil mother. He did not mention this to anyone, because it was a humiliation to him. Now the opportunity for revenge had come. Yuan Rizhen's eyes glowed fiercely as he launched a powerful attack. Violent divine energy blasted toward the evil mother. Facing such attacks, the evil mother dealt with them with ease. At the same time, it was defending against attacks from other directions. Sovereign Hongchen appeared beside Zhou Xuanji and asked softly, What do you plan to do? Zhou Xuanji raised his brow and asked with a smile, What do you mean? With them around, I just need to watch. Sovereign Hongchen gave a faint smile, and did not speak anymore. The battle continued. Under the suppression of the revered Emperor Divine Meridians, the heartless war god was killed very quickly. Although the evil Mother Spirit Controller's divine power was boundless, it could only resist. Gradually it started to get injured. Shu Longhua said softly, Branchmaster, I feel that things aren't that simple. With her strength, how can she charge into the Kunlun Origin Court? It's impossible for her not to know about the situation in the Kunlun Origin Court. Previously, A large wave of soul-controlling evil insects had intruded into the Kunlun origin court, so the evil spirit-controlling mother must have known about it. Looking at the evil mother of soul manipulation, it was clear that she was not flustered at all. There must be a trap. Humph. No matter what kind of conspiracy it is, our revered Emperor Divine Range will destroy it. After all, we are the Divine Range that gave birth to the next sovereign. Li Xianhuang snorted disdainfully. Golden scales appeared on his face and quickly covered his entire body, forming a set of divine armor that emitted golden and silver divine light that illuminated the universe. As his aura exploded, he raised the giant halberd in his hand and charged forward. Xu Longhua did not act, and remained where he was, glancing at Zhou Xuanji indistinctly. Zhou Xuanji noticed his gaze but did not mind. It seemed that the revered Emperor Divine Range wanted to take this opportunity to suppress the Emperor Sword Divine Range. The 10,000-meter-tall Golden Gate had yet to dissipate. There was a majestic aura inside. Apparently, an army was waiting. They were not targeting the evil spirit-controlling mother, but the Emperor Sword Divine Range. If you want to deal with me, you will have to destroy the evil spirit-controlling mother first. The corner of Zhou Xuanji's mouth rose into an extremely contemptuous smile. Boom! The evil spirit-controlling mother suddenly spread out its arms, sending all the enemies around it flying away. Following that, it raised its hands and crossed its palms, muttering a strange incantation that other creatures could not understand. The revered Emperor Divine Range's experts rushed up again, but were blocked by an invisible force. With the evil spirit-controlling mother as the center, no divine energy could penetrate within a radius of 100 feet. A bad feeling emerged in Zhou Xuanji's heart. Xu Longhua and Li Xianhuang also furrowed their brows. Inside the Emperor Sword Divine Range, standing above the sea of clouds, Zhou Tanhua muttered with a frown. Is the person that the sovereign mentioned coming? Zhou Shaoxian, who was next to him, asked in confusion. What are you talking about? Did you get a reminder from the sovereign when you accepted the sovereign's inheritance? Zhou Tanhua nodded and took a deep breath, trying to control his emotions. Zhou Shaoxian asked, why didn't you say it before? She looked at Zhou Tanhua with a suspicious expression as if to say, Kid, are you betraying us? It doesn't matter if I say it or not. You will understand in a while. Zhou Tanhua rolled his eyes and said in a bad mood. His words made Zhou Shaoxian even more curious. The others around them looked at each other in dismay. In their eyes, Zhou Tanhua was becoming more and more like Zhou Xuanji, unfathomable and always calm. He's here, Mortal Sovereign said in a soft voice. He had a complicated look on his face. Zhou Xuanji asked curiously, who is coming? Does the evil spirit-controlling mother have other stronger puppets? A ruthless character. He used to be the sovereign, and his master is also the sovereign, Mortal Sovereign replied. His expression was thought-provoking, which made Zhou Xuanji raise his brow. Throughout history, there were not many cases where both master and disciple were sovereigns. Zhou Xuanji asked curiously, what's his name, and who is his revered master? He is called Sovereign Kongsheng. His revered master's name is very mysterious, but it should be very familiar to you, Mortal Sovereign explained with a meaningful smile. Zhou Xuanji furrowed his brow. He suddenly had an answer in his heart. He asked with his eyes, and Mortal Sovereign nodded. Zhou Xuanji was moved, and his expression became strange. Little Sovereign. Sovereign Kongsheng belongs to the few sovereigns who didn't leave the Kunlun origin court. He has been sleeping in an independent plane. When I faced the Sword Emperor, I went to find him, but I couldn't wake him up. This person used to be the adopted son of the evil spirit-controlling mother. He once sealed the evil spirit-controlling mother with his own hands, so he felt very guilty. He claimed that if the evil spirit-controlling mother escaped again, he wouldn't do anything. He would even help the evil spirit-controlling mother to repay the kindness of raising him. Mortal Sovereign explained leisurely. She didn't use a sound transmission technique, but Xu Longhua, who was in the distance, could hear her. Sovereign Kongsheng. Xu Longhua's expression changed drastically. He had guessed many possibilities, but he didn't expect that the evil spirit-controlling mother's backer was a sovereign. Sovereign Kongsheng. He was a famous sovereign who had shocked history. He was the first sovereign to initiate the Great Elimination. But at that time, it wasn't called the Great Elimination. The rules of the Great Elimination only existed in the super divine ranges. This is going to be troublesome. Xu Longhua's expression was gloomy as he tried to think of a countermeasure. If Sovereign Kong Sheng came, they would definitely lose. The Sovereign Emperor Divine Range also stopped attacking. Everyone became restless. They could feel an extremely strong pressure coming at them, which made them panic as if a great calamity was coming. Li Xianhuang furrowed his brow. He was fighting just now and didn't pay attention to mortal sovereign's words. He was looking around, guarding against the enemy's sneak attack. The evil spirit controlling Mother's face was gloomy. Her eyes were filled with killing intent. She was looking at all the experts of the Sovereign Emperor Divine Range, as if she wanted to remember all their faces. Chapter 859. It's Sovereign Kong Sheng. Xu Longhua transmitted his voice to Li Xianhuang. Hearing this, Li Xianhuang's expression changed drastically. How is this possible? Why would Sovereign Kong Sheng help the demons who want to destroy the Kunlun origin court? He still remembered all kinds of legends about Sovereign Kong Sheng. When he was young, he even regarded Sovereign Kong Sheng as his lifelong goal. Now that such an ancient powerhouse was about to arrive, the pressure on him suddenly increased. Damn it, we must retreat. Li Xianhuang quickly made a decision. Once Sovereign Kong Sheng arrived, let alone the Sovereign Emperor Divine Range, even all the Sovereign Divine Ranges together wouldn't be able to stop him. Just as he was about to give an order, a boundless pressure that seemed to come from ancient times descended. He felt as if his throat was being strangled, making him unable to speak. He turned his head in horror. The same was true for all the Sovereign Emperor Divine Ranges experts. Zhou Xuanji and Sovereign Hong Chen also looked in the direction they were looking. They saw a giant shadow appear in the darkness at the end of the universe. It seemed to be some kind of giant bird. It was flying so fast that only its shadow could be seen. Just its shadow alone was much larger than the divine ranges next to it. Looking from afar, it gave off a strong sense of oppression. Sovereign Kong Sheng hadn't even appeared yet, but the Sovereign Emperor Divine Ranges experts were already in despair. How could they defeat such an imposing aura? Zhou Xuanji silently took out the Lesser Supreme Sword. Together with the Emperor Sword of Life and Death, they were suspended on both sides. Little Sovereign, wake up, he called Little Sovereign in his heart. After a while, Little Sovereign woke up lazily. Kid, what's wrong? He cried out in dissatisfaction. He was having an unspeakable dream and was interrupted. He was a little angry. Zhou Xuanji replied in his heart. Look who's here. Little Sovereign was stunned for a moment before he released his divine will. In the distance, the giant bird's shadow was still looming. It didn't come close, but the pressure was getting stronger. All the experts under the Origin Fusion Divine Lord 5 Enlightened Ones were shivering. All the Enlightened Ones directly knelt in the void. Whoosh! 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 Ear-piercing sounds could be heard coming from all directions. Everyone looked left and right, and saw many strong cultivators gathering around them. Nam Matiani, Chu Xingquang, Ancestor Hong Chun, the 12 Law Ancestors, and so on. All the top experts of various forces had gathered. Every one of them had a solemn look on their faces. Zhou Xuanji looked around, and his gaze fell on Nam Matiani's face. Why is there something wrong with this fellow? Zhou Xuanji frowned and thought in confusion. Nam Matiani's forehead was covered with strange black dots. They were densely packed and looked very evil. Not only him, but young Heavenly Lord and Wang Buao also felt the same way. What did the three of them encounter? Why did they all look like this? Nam Matiani did not notice Zhou Xuanji's gaze. His face was dark as he mumbled, Sovereign's aura. Could that legend be true? Young Heavenly Lord asked curiously. What are you talking about? What legend? He looked at the shadow of the giant bird in the depths of the universe, and his scalp went numb. Why did another super strong enemy appear? In just a short span of 100 years, the Kunlun Origin Court had encountered two great calamities that were hard to come by in 1 billion years. This was not a good sign. The evil mother snorted coldly. Brat, get over here. Her impatient tone was like a heavy hammer pounding on everyone's heart. As soon as he finished speaking, a loud and clear sound of footsteps could be heard. It was clearly in the void, but the sound of footsteps could be heard, making the atmosphere even more horrifying. Sovereign Kong Sheng's figure soon appeared in everyone's sight. He was wearing a white robe and dressed like a scholar. He had an elegant temperament, and looked to be in his 40s. He was extraordinarily handsome, and had a pair of eagle-like eyes, brimming with vigor. Everyone's heart shuddered at the sight of him. Sovereign Kong Sheng was the kind of existence that would scare people with just a glance. Even if he looked gentle and elegant, this impression was hard to erase. "Mother, your hatred is too great," Sovereign Kong Sheng sighed. Autarch Kong Sheng sighed, the light in his eyes fading away. Facing the evil mother spirit controller, he felt guilty. He continued to sigh. "You were so graceful back then. But now you have become like this. Why bother? As long as you are willing to give up, I can save you." Everyone held their breath as cold sweat overflowed from their foreheads. "Damn! How come it's this brat?" Little Sovereign's exclamation resounded in Zhou Xuanji's mind. He then muttered, "No wonder the evil mother looks so familiar. It turned out to be her. Back then, she was a rare beauty in the Kunlun origin court. I didn't expect that girl to embark on this evil path. TSK, she used to be full of kindness. She adopted many homeless children, and established her own sect. How did she end up like this?" His tone was filled with disdain. Zhou Xuanji asked in his heart. In Sovereign Kong Sheng's heart, who is more important, you or his adoptive mother? He could tell from Sovereign Kong Sheng's attitude that he was a filial son. How could his master be more important than his mother? "Of course it's me," Little Sovereign proudly said in Zhou Xuanji's mind. His adoptive mother has been with him for 16 years, and I have taught him for 30,000 years. He has escaped from death many times thanks to me. While they were talking, Sovereign Kong Sheng had already arrived beside the evil mother. The evil mother coldly said, "What? You don't keep your promise? Do you know what kind of suffering I had to go through to save you? How many difficulties did I have to go through to let you become Little Sovereign's disciple?" Hearing this, Sovereign Kong Sheng felt guilty. He sighed and turned his head to look at the people in front of him. He faintly said, "As the sovereign, I should think about the people of the origin court. I don't know the origin court anymore. Now it's time to repay the kindness of raising me. I'm sorry." After saying this, he raised his right hand. "You are Sovereign Kong Sheng? Do you want to attack your descendants?" Nam Matiani suddenly shouted. His tone was extremely disrespectful. He was denouncing Sovereign Kong Sheng. No one blamed him in their heart. On the contrary, they were indignant. It wasn't wrong to die in the hands of the demons outside the court. What was wrong was to die in the hands of the sovereign they believed in. Sovereign Kong Sheng looked at Nam Matiani and replied, "Being the sovereign for a while doesn't mean that I will be the sovereign forever. The path to becoming the sovereign is not to be supported by all living beings, but to suppress all living beings to reach the top, and then bless all living beings. Apart from your cheap faith, all living beings have not given me anything in return. You mortals will never understand how many things I have lost for all living beings." He said it very calmly and casually, but such an attitude made people feel bitterly disappointed. This world-shaking supreme being did not have any pity for the common people. The evil mother coldly snorted and said, "Why didn't you realize this at the beginning? It seems that you have encountered a lot of difficulties after I was sealed." Sovereign Kong Sheng shook his head and stepped forward. "Kill them all. Leave no one alive. As long as I kill them, I don't need you to do anything." The evil mother laughed mockingly. Hearing this, Sovereign Kong Sheng rolled his eyes. If these people were killed, what threat would the Kunlun origin court have to the evil mother? "Damn it, let's fight it out." Yuan Ruzhen roared. He was once the origin court war god, and most respected the sovereign. How could he tolerate the sovereign's betrayal? Chapter 860. Yuan Ruzhen's roar ignited everyone's anger. Looking at Sovereign Kong Sheng, they were no longer afraid. Their blood was boiling. Yeah, so what if he's a sovereign? If the sovereign wants to kill us, then we will kill the sovereign. Yeah, we have already faced the Sword Emperor. Why should we be afraid of him? I can't stand this cowardice. At worst, I will die. Let's do it together. The experts of each divine range were filled with indignation. They all roared and cheered each other on. Sovereign Kong Sheng was expressionless. He didn't stop. At this critical moment, Zhou Xuanji suddenly stepped forward and asked in a loud voice, Sovereign Kong Sheng, in your heart, do you owe your adoptive mother the most? As soon as he said this, everyone's eyes fell on Zhou Xuanji, including Sovereign Kong Sheng. The evil mother also looked at Zhou Xuanji in surprise. She wondered what this kid wanted to say. In the Emperor Sword Divine Range, Jiang Shui, Zhou Tanhua, and the others were anxious. What is father doing? The bird that sticks out gets shot. Zhou Xiaoxian couldn't wait. She wanted to rush out, but the Divine Range Guardian Array was blocking her way. No one could break through. Jiang Shui patted her chest and said calmly, Xuanji must have a way. The others couldn't help but look forward to it. What do you mean? Sovereign Kong Sheng stared at Zhou Xuanji and asked calmly. He could hear the underlying meaning. Zhou Xuanji obviously knew something. If your revered master asks you to help your mother, what will you do? Zhou Xuanji stared at him without fear. His tone was thought-provoking. The evil mother's expression changed. She instantly guessed who Zhou Xuanji was talking about. Little Sovereign. It had been so long. Shouldn't Little Sovereign have been forgotten by everyone? After all, Little Sovereign didn't make any significant contributions. He wasn't outstanding in history. Not many people remembered him. She asked in a cold voice. Brat, where did you come from? Sovereign Kong Sheng furrowed his brow. He stared at Zhou Xuanji, as if he wanted to see through him. Sovereign Kong Sheng, I'm asking you a question. Which is more important, your teacher's kindness, or your upbringing? Zhou Xuanji stared at Sovereign Kong Sheng and asked forcefully. The Lesser Supreme Sword suddenly flew in front of him, and rotated at high speed. The powerful aura of Little Sovereign leaked out. Sovereign Kong Sheng's expression changed drastically. Even the evil mother couldn't help but be shocked. Could it be impossible? Yuan Rizen's eyes widened. When he was still the Origin Court War God, he had seen Little Supreme's glory. That arrogant and contemptuous existence was still alive? The other creatures were both nervous and curious. Could that divine sword be the keepsake of Supreme Kong Sheng's master? What is your relationship with my master? Autarch Kong Sheng asked, but he already had an answer in his heart. Could it be that this child had obtained his master's inheritance? No wonder he could become a sole sovereign. Therefore, his heart was filled with confusion. On one side was his master, and on the other side was his adoptive mother. Who should he choose? A soul flew out of the Lesser Supreme Sword. It was Little Supreme Sword. He glared angrily at Supreme Exalt Kong Sheng and cursed loudly. You bastard! Have you forgotten what I taught you? He learned about Sovereign Kong Sheng's words from Zhou Xuanji. I don't betray all living beings owe me. This sentence was 2F** King Heartless. When Supreme Kong Sheng saw him, he hurriedly knelt down and cupped his fists. Greetings, master. He was very excited. His master was actually still alive. Don't call me master. You are going to destroy the Kunlun Origin Court for the sake of the demons. Are you crazy? Don't say that you are betraying your duty as a sovereign. Once you do this and leave the Kunlun Origin Court, you will die without a doubt. Little Supreme angrily rebuked Supreme Kong Sheng in a tone of exasperation and disappointment. All the creatures in the universe were dumbfounded. This is Sovereign Kong Sheng's master? In other words, Zhou Xuanji and Sovereign Kong Sheng are very likely to be brothers. The Emperor Sword Divine Range was in an uproar. This kid actually has such a backer. Daoya Old Man said excitedly. The others were also pleasantly surprised, including Jiang Shui, Zhou Tanhua and Zhou Xiaoxian. Zhou Xiaoxian said excitedly. Tanhua has the inheritance of the current sovereign. Father has the backing of an ancient sovereign. Our Emperor Sword Divine Range is going to take off. Looking at Sovereign Kong Sheng's attitude, he was obviously in awe of Little Supreme. He is really a treasure. How many powerful cultivators are helping him? Ren Niming sighed with emotion. Ever since he knew Zhou Xuanji, many powerful cultivators had taken a liking to Zhou Xuanji and risked their lives to save him. This was the terrifying effect of aptitude. He couldn't even be jealous. Revered master, Facing little Sovereign's scolding, Sovereign Kong Sheng felt very ashamed. He didn't know how to answer. Little Sovereign crossed his arms over his chest and snorted. I don't ask you to kill her, but you can't help her harm the world. Once a sovereign, forever a sovereign. Sovereign Kong Sheng lowered his head. He wished he could find a hole to hide in. The evil mother-controlling spirit said in a cold voice. What? Are you going to kill your mother again? Sovereign Kong Sheng shuddered. He didn't answer. At this moment he fell into a dilemma. He didn't know how to choose. His heart was filled with regret. If I had known this earlier, I would have stayed in seclusion and never come out. Seeing Sovereign Kong Sheng in such a sorry state, everyone looked at each other in dismay. All of them found it unbelievable. At the same time, they were curious about little Sovereign. Who is this person? Li Xianhuang asked Xu Longhua in a low voice. Xu Longhua furrowed his brow and said hesitantly, Sovereign Kong Sheng has many masters, but the one he respects the most is Little Sovereign. Little Sovereign? Li Xianhuang was moved. The name Little Sovereign sounded worse than ordinary sovereigns. But if one knew Little Sovereign's past, they would understand that Little Sovereign's strength surpassed most grand sovereigns. The other sovereign range masters and super divine range masters were discussing Little Sovereign's identity. Sovereign Kong Sheng gritted his teeth and said, Then I won't help her, but I hope revered master won't do anything to her either. This was the biggest concession he could make. The evil mother-controlling spirit sneered. You are still so weak. As a sovereign, you are so respectful. You are really a disgrace to the sovereigns. No matter how she ridiculed Sovereign Kong Sheng, he remained unmoved. He looked up at Little Sovereign with a complicated expression and asked, Revered master, how did you end up like this? Before he could finish his words, Little Sovereign glared at him. What do you know? This is called cultivation. Cultivating sovereigns is my hobby. This kid named Zhou Xuanji will become a sovereign. Moreover, he will become a sovereign that has never been seen before. You will see it in the future. Little Sovereign snorted. His words made everyone's expression drastically change. Zhou Xuanji looked calm as he watched Little Sovereign build momentum for him. This old kid is quite tactful. Sovereign Kong Sheng turned to look at Zhou Xuanji and carefully sized him up. The more he looked, the more shocked he became. What kind of power is in his body? I can't even see through it, he exclaimed in his heart. He suddenly developed a strong interest in Zhou Xuanji. Zhou Xuanji said, Sovereign Kong Sheng, since you don't want to help her, then you should leave, lest you get into trouble again. Chapter 861. Zhou Xuanji's words made Sovereign Kong Sheng fall into silence. He didn't respond immediately. He was still thinking about Zhou Xuanji's origin. The atmosphere became extremely solemn. Little Sovereign, on the other hand, was very upset. He scolded. Why are you being so wishy-washy? Are you going to get lost or not? His irritation made all the students break out in a cold sweat. Little Sovereign might have a very powerful origin, but he was only left with a soul, while Sovereign Kong Sheng was still in his peak state. If he angered Sovereign Kong Sheng, could Little Sovereign bear it? Sovereign Kong Sheng's eyes flickered. In the end, he bowed to Little Sovereign before turning around and leaving. Brat! You heartless brat! How dare you abandon me again? The evil mother-controlling spirit angrily rebuked. Her eyes were bloodshot, looking very ferocious. However, no matter what she said, Sovereign Kong Sheng didn't look back. Kill! Nam Tianyi immediately ordered. The Tianyi Divine Range's experts took the lead. Next were the Sovereign Emperor Divine Range, Qinxiong Divine Range, Mortal Divine Range, and so on. As soon as the Sovereign Divine Ranges attacked, the other Super Divine Ranges also made their moves. The great battle broke out once again. All kinds of divine abilities bombarded the evil mother-controlling spirit. The evil mother-controlling spirit didn't sit still and wait for death. It immediately manipulated its puppets to fight. Zhou Xuanji didn't intervene in the rest of the battle. As long as Sovereign Kong Sheng didn't intervene, the evil mother-controlling spirit was dead. The evil mother-controlling spirit's plan was good. Unfortunately, it ran into Zhou Xuanji and Little Sovereign. Otherwise, Sovereign Kong Sheng might really kill the Kunlun origin court for the sake of nurturing her. Yuan Risen was the most violent and furious. He rushed to the front, and was repelled by the evil mother controlling spirit again and again. Yet he could still launch attacks. The other powerful cultivators were also very strong. They suppressed the evil mother controlling spirit to the point that it couldn't resist. Zhou Xuanji and Little Sovereign quietly watched the battle. I really didn't expect her to end up like this. Little Sovereign sighed with emotion. His tone was full of sorrow. Zhou Xuanji smiled and said, "It's all fate." Little Sovereign curled his lips and said, "You are already a soul sovereign. Do you still believe in fate?" Zhou Xuanji could hear that he was really sad. It seemed like the evil spirit controlling mother was really a peerless beauty in the past. Now, she had fallen into a state that was neither a human nor a ghost. Otherwise, how could a supreme martial artist of a generation sigh in admiration? Little Sovereign didn't let him make a move. They watched the defeat of the evil spirit controlling mother together. In less than an hour, the evil spirit controlling mother was suppressed by Nam Matiani with a golden alms bowl. The other almighty experts from the various divine ranges also applied sealing techniques. In the blink of an eye, the golden alms bowl was covered with tens of thousands of different seals. It was impossible for the evil spirit controlling mother to break free on its own. The creatures controlled by the mind-controlling evil insects were also sealed one after another. This calamity ended just like that. However, the atmosphere was still quite strange, and all of the creatures looked at Zhou Xuanji with complicated expressions. Li Xianhuang took a step forward and asked, "May I know Senior's name? Are you the little sovereign who has shaken the ages?" Little Supreme Sovereign. Some creatures were immediately moved, but most of them were very curious. What was the origin of Little Supreme Being? The word little made them feel that Little Sovereign was just a half-step sovereign. So what if I am? Little Sovereign said with an arrogant look on his face. This was his nature, but in fact he was just pretending. The stronger he appeared, the less people would dare to plot against him. Nam Matiani then asked, "Are you going to make Zhou Xuanji the sovereign?" These words tugged at the hearts of all the living beings present. The competition for the sovereign's position was the hottest topic at the moment. I naturally hope that he can succeed, but the sovereign's position depends on the people. You can play with him as much as you want, but you will die easily. Whether it's worth it or not, it all depends on you. There is only one sovereign in each era. If you don't become the sovereign, it doesn't mean that you can't achieve great things. Little Sovereign replied, his voice reaching the ears of all the living beings. These words didn't surprise everyone. Instead, they fell into contemplation. They felt that what Little Sovereign said made sense. No matter how they fought, there was only one sovereign. Thousands of troops crossing a single log bridge wasn't even enough to describe it. If they didn't become the sovereign, they could still live freely. If they wanted to become the sovereign, they would have to fight all over the Kunlun origin court. Yeah, in fact, we don't have any hope of becoming the sovereign. There are only a few people who are really qualified to become the sovereign. Why should we offend Little Sovereign for this? Zhou Xuanji is indeed powerful. He also contributed to the battle against the Sword Emperor and Dark Sovereign. I heard from the 12 ancestors that Zhou Xuanji indeed killed the Sword Emperor and Dark Sovereign. But at that time, the cultivation of the two sovereigns was suppressed to the Origin Fusion Divine Lord realm. Doesn't it mean that he is invincible in the same realm? In this catastrophe, it's all thanks to his appearance that Sovereign Kong Sheng was forced to retreat. Zhou Xuanji raised his brow as he listened to the discussions of all living beings. He didn't expect Little Sovereign's words to be so useful. Nam Matiani flew over and said with a smile, "Brother Xuanji, your progress is beyond my expectations every time. I don't even dare to speculate about your possibilities." In his opinion, Zhou Xuanji already had the qualifications to become the sovereign. However, Zhou Xuanji's limit wasn't as simple as Great Sovereign Lord. "I think Brother Nanmu also has an opportunity," Zhou Xuanji said with a faint smile. Zhou Xuanji said with a faint smile, as he exchanged pleasantries with Nam Matiani. Nam Matiani burst into laughter. The two chatted for a while before Nam Matiani suddenly turned to look at all living beings and shouted, "I, Nam Matiani, on behalf of the Tiani Divine Range, declare that I strongly support Zhou Xuanji to become the sovereign. Whoever dares to stop Zhou Xuanji from becoming the sovereign will be the enemy of the Tianyi divine range. Wah! Everyone was in an uproar. Even Li Xianhuang, Chu Xingguang, old ancestor Hongqian, the 12 law ancestors, and other peerless powerhouses had their expressions drastically changed. Xu Longhua's eyes flickered as he mumbled, Nam Tianyi, you are using the same trick you used in the past again. When Sovereign Wu Zhou rose, Nam Tianyi supported Sovereign Wu Zhou and helped him become the sovereign. After that, the originally desolate Tianyi divine range began to rise and became one of the top 3. Yuan Rizan furrowed his brow. His eyes were burning with anger. He hated Zhou Xuanji, and he believed in the position of the sovereign. How could he hope for Zhou Xuanji to become the sovereign? Okay, everyone please disperse. My Emperor Sword divine range can't bear your presence here. I reckon many disciples have been overwhelmed by your divine might, Zhou Xuanji said, cupping his fists. Zhou Xuanji said as he cupped his fist. He tried to resolve the tense atmosphere with a joke. All the powerhouses burst into laughter and left one after another. In less than the time it takes for half an incense stick to burn, there were no other divine ranges in this universe. Zhou Xuanji, Little Sovereign, and Mortal Sovereign were floating in front of the Emperor Sword divine range. Brat, whether or not you can become a sovereign will depend on yourself. You already have 2 nomological powers, and you're only 1 step away from becoming a sovereign. You don't have to collect nomological powers one by one. All you need to do is cultivate the soul nomological powers to the extreme and absorb 3,000 nomological powers into your soul. Little Sovereign stared at Zhou Xuanji and said seriously. Autarch Crimson Dust nodded. I will help you become an autarch. Hearing this, Little Sovereign glanced at her and said with a faint smile, Are you going to use the cultivation method this sovereign taught you in the past? Chapter 862. Seeing the weird smile on Little Sovereign's face, Zhou Xuanji was speechless. But Mortal Sovereign pretended not to hear him. He stared at Zhou Xuanji and said, You reach Origin Fusion Divine Lord 10 clears first, then I will help you. Shimming? Zhou Xuanji raised his brow. He thought that Origin Fusion Divine Lord only had 9 enlightened realms, and did not expect him to have 10 enlightened realms. Supreme Hongqian coldly glanced at Little Sovereign, before disappearing from the spot. TSK, she's really interesting. She wasn't like this in the past. Little Sovereign teased with a gloating tone. Zhou Xuanji rolled his eyes at him before turning around and entering the Emperor Sword divine range. The shock of the Kunlun Origin Court had just begun. After all, this battle involved 2 supremes. After returning to the divine range, Zhou Xuanji received deafening cheers. All the disciples were shouting Zhou Xuanji's name to express their excitement and surprise. Zhou Shaoxian and Zhou Tanhua suddenly became very interested in Zhou Xuanji. They began to pester him, hoping to get his teachings. The disciples of the Emperor Sword divine range became even more excited as they cultivated diligently. In just a few days, a slogan spread in the divine range. Cultivate for the sake of the supremacy. Help divine ranges become venerables. Most of the disciples changed their mindset to not drag Zhou Xuanji down. Judging from the current situation, Zhou Xuanji was almost certain to become the sovereign. With the help of a supreme being, his aptitude was unprecedented. If he couldn't become a supreme being, who could? At the same time, Sovereign Kong Sheng, Little Sovereign, and Zhou Xuanji became the most frequently mentioned names in the Kunlun Origin Court. Everyone was shocked. Was Zhou Xuanji really going to become the sovereign? If he succeeded, he would be the fastest person in history to become a supreme. There was no other. Now Zhou Xuanji was not even 2,000 years old. Ever since he broke into the Kunlun Origin Court, he had amazed the world with a single brilliant feat. By now, all living beings were already used to his existence. Speaking of Zhou Xuanji, everyone's impression was that he was a peerless genius. Now this prodigy had already launched a powerful attack towards the position of a supreme being. This kind of qualitative change would cause an extremely strong shock to the hearts of all living beings. And this kind of shock would give rise to extreme worship. More and more creatures began to worship Zhou Xuanji, and even cheered for him. Zhou Xuanji should become the sovereign. That's right. Looking at Zhou Xuanji's rise, if he's not the sovereign, who is worthy to be the sovereign? Among all the sovereigns in history, none of them is as legendary as Zhou Xuanji. His path to the supremacy stage has gone through 5 supremacies. The Sword Emperor is the sovereign of Anti-Kunlun. This proves that Zhou Xuanji is qualified to become the sovereign. Who can tell me what happened before Zhou Xuanji entered the Kunlun origin court? Zhou Xuanji's voice began to spread throughout the Kunlun origin court. Many divine ranges were discussing this matter. Some range masters wanted to suppress him, but this kind of voice had already gained momentum. It was impossible to suppress it. Of course, more divine ranges were supporting and even promoting such a call. If they could gain Zhou Xuanji's favor, their future development would be even smoother. This was standing on the supreme martial artist side. Although Zhou Xuanji was cultivating in the Emperor Sword divine range, with Chang Xian as his spy, he could clearly understand the movements of the Kunlun origin court. After knowing all of this, he didn't seem too excited and remained very calm. He only had one goal now: breaking through to the Origin Fusion Divine Monarch 10th Brilliance. His current cultivation was Origin Fusion Divine Lord 8 Comprehensions. It seemed close, but in fact the gap was like heaven and earth. It was very difficult to surpass. Little Sovereign fell into a deep sleep again. If Zhou Xuanji didn't call him, he wouldn't wake up. In the blink of an eye, 10 years passed. A palace in the Origin Court was filled with clouds and mist. The 12 technique ancestors stood in a circle, looking solemn. Each of them was holding 3 jade slips. They looked at each other in dismay. No one spoke. After a long while, a technique ancestor who looked like a young man said, "What's there to hesitate about? I recommend Zhou Xuanji. This kid has talent, ability, background, benevolence, decisiveness, and ruthlessness. He is the most suitable candidate to become the sovereign." As soon as he said this, the other technique ancestors also spoke up. "I also choose Zhou Xuanji. The sovereigns who are related to Zhou Xuanji are the Sword Emperor, Sovereign Kong Sheng, and Little Sovereign. Who else should we choose but him? Don't forget that the sovereign asked him to kill the Sword Emperor and the Darkness Sovereign with his own hands. Let's choose Zhou Xuanji. Only his divine range is established for the first time. God knows how much trouble will be involved if he chooses another divine range. Let's vote." After chatting for a while, the 12 technique ancestors raised their hands to vote. In the end, 9 people chose Zhou Xuanji to be the sovereign. In that case, let's start building momentum for Zhou Xuanji. His current cultivation is Origin Fusion Divine Lord 8 Comprehensions, and he's ranked first on the sovereign list. "It's very easy to build momentum," said an old technique ancestor. The other technique ancestors nodded upon hearing this. They immediately took action. This year, the Origin Court announced that Zhou Xuanji was ranked first on the sovereign list and had never tasted defeat. They elected Zhou Xuanji as the first candidate for sovereign. As soon as this statement came out, the Kunlun Origin Court was shocked. Countless creatures were talking about this matter. Most of them expressed their support. A new sovereign ascended to the top meant that a new era had arrived. When the news reached the Emperor Sword Divine Range, it shocked the entire Origin Court. Daoya Old Man held a celebration for Zhou Xuanji. All the disciples of the range celebrated together. Although Zhou Xuanji didn't attend, the disciples were still very excited. On this day, a technique ancestor came in person to congratulate Zhou Xuanji. He led 100 Origin Fusion Divine Lords and brought all kinds of gifts. Jiang Shui, Chang Xian, and the others welcomed them and gathered in the conference hall. "Senior Mei, how can we trouble you to come in person?" Jiang Shui said with a smile. Her tone was very calm. She didn't seem to be humble or arrogant. Senior Mei waved his hand, smiled and said, "If nothing goes wrong, Zhou Xuanji will become the next sovereign. In the future, he will be the leader of the 12 technique ancestors. The technique ancestors only sent me, which is already disrespectful. It's just that they are busy with the ascension of the sovereign." Jiang Shui gave Chang Xian a look. Chang Xian immediately understood and left quietly. Senior Mei continued with a smile. "In today's Origin Court, There is no genius who can rival Zhou Xuanji. It's no exaggeration to say that there is no genius who can rival Zhou Xuanji in history. He began to flatter Zhou Xuanji without holding back. The more he spoke, the more excited he became. At first, Jiang Shui was able to keep calm. But toward the end, she was beaming with joy. Daoya old man, the little black snake, Bei Xiao Wangjian, and the others also began to flatter Zhou Xuanji. The more powerful Zhou Xuanji was, the more glorious they looked. After the time it takes for half an incense stick to burn, Zhou Xuanji appeared in the hall. As soon as he appeared, Senior Mei stood up. In the previous battle with the spirit-controlling evil mother, Senior Mei had seen Zhou Xuanji's elegance. He cupped his fists and said with a smile, "Brother Zhou, we meet again. The next time we meet, I may have to call you sovereign." The compliment had already turned into a positive expression. Chapter 863. Zhou Xuanji sat on the main seat with his hands on his knees. He looked at Senior Plum and asked with a smile, "So the Origin Court has already recognized me as the sovereign, or are there other tests later?" He noticed the title of the first candidate. Senior Plum nodded and said, "There is indeed a test, but judging from the current momentum of the Kunlun Origin Court, it is almost certain that you will become a supreme." When the others heard this, they all became excited. They had long dreamed of Zhou Xuanji becoming the sovereign, and this day finally became clear to them. Zhou Xuanji nodded and asked, "What do I need to prepare next? Do I need to wait until I reach the sovereign's power, or?" Senior Mei waved his hand and transmitted his voice. "Once you become a supreme being, you will obtain supreme god force. As long as you have the cultivation of an origin fusion divine monarch, you will be able to obtain supreme god force. This matter must not be spread." For him to reveal such a secret, it could be said that he was treating Zhou Xuanji like a sovereign. Zhou Xuanji nodded and began to exchange pleasantries with Senior Mei. After chatting for almost an hour, Senior Mei finally left with her people. Zhou Xuanji asked Bei Xiao Wangjian and the others to take inventory of the ancestors' gifts. Looking at Bei Xiao Wangjian and Huang Lianxin, he suddenly thought of Xiao Jinghong, Zhao Congjian, and the rest. He wondered how they had been lately. They had not returned for a long time. Wow, the ancestor of technique is so generous. So many high-grade Dao stones, magic treasures, and origin court techniques and magical powers. Zhou Xiaoxian exclaimed in surprise, holding a golden silk bag. The others were also holding different bags and rings of holding, all of them very excited. Jiang Shui walked to Zhou Xuanji's side and asked softly, "You don't seem to be happy. You're about to become the sovereign. Are you still afraid that something will go wrong before that?" Zhou Xuanji raised his brow and asked with a smile, "How do you know?" Jiang Shui curled her lips and said, "I can guess it just by looking at your serious expression." Zhou Xuanji pulled her into his embrace and smiled. His eyes became clear. He began to think about how to break through to the Origin Fusion Divine Lord 10th brightness. With his current rate of growth, it would take a very long time. As for absorbing other living beings to become stronger, that was temporarily out of the question. Right now he was trying to break through to the Supreme Exalt realm. How could he lift a rock and smash his own foot? No matter how discreet he was, he would still be exposed. Haste makes waste. Forget it. Zhou Xuanji shook his head and stopped thinking about it. Looking at his trusted subordinates who were having fun in the palace, he could not help but smile. The news about the technique ancestors coming to the Emperor Sword Divine Range spread like wildfire in the Kunlun Origin Court. This confirmed that Zhou Xuanji had become a sovereign candidate, and not just any ordinary candidate. The technique ancestors treated Zhou Xuanji as the next sovereign. For a time, a storm was brewing in the Kunlun Origin Court. Those on the sovereign ranking, on the other hand, were having a hard time. Being on the sovereign ranking had given rise to their ambitions for the position of sovereign. But now, their ambitions had no choice but to be destroyed. They suffered a great blow and felt very uncomfortable. They wanted to give up on this thought, but they felt extremely reluctant, as if they were cutting off a part of their heart. Void Boundary Palace. A Void Boundary Heavenly Venerate sat on the main seat. He had a dignified expression as he looked at the Void Boundary war gods in the hall. He said, That's all I have to say. Go and make preparations. Remember, do not provoke the Emperor Sword Divine Range. Yes. The group of Emptiness Boundary Martial Gods immediately obeyed the order and left. When the Void Boundary Heavenly Venerate was the only one left in the hall, Zhou Fei's figure appeared beside him. Zhou Fei's face was pale, and his eyes were bloodshot. He said in a cold voice, "Something is wrong. Why didn't the Origin Court investigate the Void Boundary Palace?" The Void Boundary Heavenly Venerate shook his head and said, "I don't know. Maybe they are busy with the new sovereign. The order of the Kunlun Origin Court is already in chaos. They are too busy to deal with it. They want to establish the sovereign first before sweeping away all the heretics." He looked up at Zhou Fei and asked seriously, "Are you sure that Zhou Xuanji will not deal with you after becoming the sovereign?" He didn't know much about Zhou Xuanji, but in his eyes, Zhou Xuanji was undoubtedly an extremely powerful existence. He was decisive in killing, and even dared to contradict the sovereign. Would such a proud son of heaven tolerate Zhou Fei's existence? Not only did Zhou Fei look exactly like Zhou Xuanji, but he had also threatened to eliminate Zhou Xuanji. If he were Zhou Xuanji, the first thing he would do after becoming the sovereign would be to eliminate Zhou Fei. "Don't worry, I know him," Zhou Fei said, shaking his head. Zhou Fei shook his head. Then he changed the topic and coldly snorted, "Beast Sovereign is too vicious. We must destroy the Evil Sky Divine Range before he leaves. Let's see if he will still pursue his great Tao." The Void Boundary Heavenly Venerate nodded upon hearing this. Inside the Emperor Sword Divine Range, Zhou Xuanji stood by the lake and taught Zhou Tanhua. He was giving pointers to the Greatly Divine Suppressor technique. Zhou Shaoxian was practicing swordsmanship not far away. She looked like a female immortal waving her sword on the lake. Her posture was elegant and full of celestial aura. The scene was harmonious like a painting. Zhou Tanhua opened his eyes and asked, "Father, will you create a new cultivation technique after becoming the sovereign? I feel that although the Greatly Divine Suppressor technique's avatar ability is exquisite, its strength is only on par with the main body. You need to create a better cultivation technique." Zhou Xuanji found it funny and asked, "Why? You already looked down on the Greatly Divine Suppressor technique?" This kid was indeed powerful. The Greatly Divine Suppressor technique had already reached the 4th level. He could break through to the 5th level at any time. Everyone in Emperor Sword Court thought that he would be as powerful as his father. "No, I feel that your aura has changed. It seems that you have cultivated a new cultivation technique," Zhou Tanhua said with a smile. Zhou Tanhua said with a smile full of confidence. Zhou Xuanji said with a smile that wasn't quite a smile, "Kid, your senses are very sharp. I wonder if it's innate or acquired." This kid's growth rate was visible to the naked eye. He was getting stronger almost every day. When Zhou Xuanji became the sovereign, he could let Zhou Tanhua take the position of range master with peace of mind. They are all sovereign's inheritances, but compared to you, father, they are definitely far inferior, Zhou Tanhua said, scratching his head with a smile. Zhou Tanhua scratched his head and smiled. Then he became a little shy. At this moment, strands of red dust chi appeared in the air above their heads, quickly condensing into a red hole. Then Mortal Sovereign and Xian Xianghua stepped out of it. "Mother!" Zhou Tanhua cried out excitedly, and immediately rushed over. Mortal Sovereign came to Zhou Xuanji's side in a flash. She stared into Zhou Xuanji's eyes and asked, "Have you had any contact with Sovereign Kong Sheng during this time?" Zhou Xuanji shook his head and said, "He doesn't hate me. How could I have any contact with him?" "Sovereign Kong Sheng has fallen," Mortal Sovereign said in a low voice, her eyes cold. Hearing this, Zhou Xuanji was stunned. "Sovereign Kong Sheng has fallen? How is this possible? He was a sovereign, and even if he had fallen, how could there be no movement? Could it be that Sovereign Kong Sheng was killed outside the Kunlun Origin Court?" Zhou Xuanji's sword-like eyebrows furrowed as he fell into deep thought. How strong was the existence that could kill Sovereign Kong Sheng? "I went to visit Sovereign Kong Sheng. His independent plane was destroyed. His body was left in the cave intact. But his soul had been taken away, and all his divine energy had been sucked away." Mortal Sovereign's face was solemn. There was a hint of uneasiness in her voice. Chapter 864. His body was unharmed, but his soul was extracted? Zhou Xuanji's brow furrowed even tighter. He was even more astonished. From the looks of it, there were only two possibilities. One was that Sovereign Kong Sheng deliberately left his body. The other was that he encountered an enemy far stronger than him, and had no power to resist. The former was still okay, but the latter was unimaginable. Sovereign Kong Sheng was a sovereign, and a famous one in history. His strength was unfathomable and unpredictable. An existence that could kill him. Just thinking about it made people shudder. Then, why are you looking for me? Zhou Xuanji looked up and asked. He had no friendship with Sovereign Kong Sheng. It didn't matter if he died. Sovereign Hong Chen stared at him and said, "Have you forgotten that you will soon become a sovereign? The mysterious existence who killed Sovereign Kong Sheng might attack you." Zhou Xuanji nodded and said, "The other party did not harm the Kunlun origin court. It's either a personal grudge, or he is only targeting the sovereigns." It was impossible for him not to feel pressured, but he had to stay calm. He couldn't be afraid before even seeing the enemy. Now the other party seemed invincible and invincible. But when Zhou Xuanji became a great sovereign lord, it was still unknown who would be the winner. He had encountered such an invincible enemy at every stage of his growth. "I will remind you to be careful," Sovereign Hong Chen said softly. Autarch Crimson Dust said softly. With these words, she vanished from where she stood. Xian Xianghua and Zhou Tanhua landed in front of Zhou Xuanji. "What did the sovereign say to you?" Xian Xianghua asked curiously. She had always wanted to know the relationship between Zhou Xuanji and Sovereign Hong Chen. Zhou Xuanji raised his brow. He and Sovereign Hong Chen weren't communicating telepathically. Why didn't the others hear it? He shook his head and said with a smile, "Nothing. You have already reached Origin Fusion, Divine Lord. How did you cultivate?" Although he and Xian Xianghua's exterminating divine eyes were connected, it had only been a short time. She had already reached Origin Fusion, Divine Lord by leaps and bounds. There must be other reasons. I have already become half a mortal god. It won't be long before I become a complete mortal god. At that time, you can leave the Emperor Sword Divine Range if you want. I will help you guard the Emperor Sword Divine Range," Xian Xianghua said excitedly. She rubbed her hands, looking eager. It was as if she couldn't wait to help Zhou Xuanji take the position of Range Master. After all, she had the heart of a powerhouse and wanted to be independent. She already knew that Zhou Xuanji had become the first candidate to become the sovereign. In the future, the Emperor Sword Divine Range would naturally need someone new to shoulder the heavy responsibility. Zhou Xuanji raised his brow and said with a smile, "Oh, you want to be the Range Master? Then what about your son? Your son is now the supernova of the Kunlun Origin Court, just like me back then." Hearing this, Xian Xianghua turned to look at Zhou Tanhua with a surprised expression. Did this kid's cultivation catch up again? Zhou Tanhua smiled shyly and said, "I still can't compare to you." Xian Xianghua curled her lips and was instantly displeased. She pinched Zhou Tanhua's ear and snorted. "Brat, do you know how hard your mother has been cultivating recently? How did you catch up with her? It seems like you inherited your father's talent perfectly. Sigh, should I be happy or disappointed?" She was both angry and amused. She should be happy that her son was so powerful. But she was also a person who was unwilling to be left alone. "Forget it. I'll just be the branch master's mother." Xian Xianghua sighed inwardly. The former number one in the northern wilderness region was at a loss. The idea of being the sole ruler in her heart began to collapse. Zhou Tanhua said seriously, "I'm still too young. Although my cultivation has improved quickly, I don't have much experience. Give the position of the Range Master to my mother. I will learn from her." He really didn't have much desire for status and power. He even found it troublesome. Every time he thought of how many creatures there were in the Emperor Sword Divine Range, and how many powers there were, he would have a headache. "Humph, does your mother need you to give in?" Xian Xianghua said disdainfully, twisting Zhou Tanhua's ear half a circle. Zhou Xuanji glared at her and scolded with a smile. "Your son has grown up. You can't bully him like this in public." Xian Xianghua was disdainful, but she still obediently let go. Only in front of Zhou Xuanji would she be obedient. Zhou Shaoxian flew over and hugged Xian Xianghua's arm. She giggled and said, "Aunt Xian, have you learned any powerful divine abilities? Teach me. Teach me." "Okay. Let's go, little girl." Xian Xianghua hooked her nose and said with a chuckle. The two women left hand in hand and quickly disappeared into the horizon. Zhou Tanhua sighed helplessly and said, "Father, my sister is my mother's biological daughter, right?" Zhou Xuanji glared at him and scolded, "Get lost, hurry up and cultivate. You must become an origin fusion divine lord within 100 years. If you can't do it, you will stay in the Emperor Sword divine range for the rest of your life." Zhou Tanhua smiled bitterly upon hearing this. 100 years? This is going to trap me to death. After Xian Xianghua's return, the Emperor Sword divine range became restless. This woman fought with people everywhere. Except for Zhou Xuanji, no one in the Emperor Sword divine range was her opponent. Even if everyone joined forces, they still wouldn't be able to defeat her. Therefore, she began to challenge the surrounding divine ranges. In less than 3 years, she had defeated dozens of divine ranges in the vicinity. Xian Xianghua's name also began to spread. She even called herself the Devil Sovereign. No matter how she won, whether it was because of Zhou Xuanji's fame or not, she had already become famous. Zhou Xuanji learned of this news while he was cultivating. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He used his divine will to probe Xian Xianghua's cultivation. To his surprise, she was constantly improving in battle. It seemed that the cultivation technique passed down by mortal sovereign was amazing. He didn't interfere and let Xian Xianghua do as she pleased. On this day, the Void Boundary Palace began to move. They mobilized their army to attack the Evil Sky Divine Range. This war came quickly and sensationally. Countless creatures threw themselves into the war. Many divine ranges could hear the commotion. Zhou Xuanji remained unmoved after receiving the news. Chang Xian asked hesitantly, "The Void Boundary Palace has enmity with us, and the Evil Sky Divine Range is our old friend. Are we not going to make a move?" Although she was loyal to Zhou Xuanji, the Evil Sky Divine Range was her hometown after all. Zhou Xuanji replied without opening his eyes, "Beast Sovereign hasn't made a move." Chang Xian immediately furrowed her brow when she heard this. "That's right. Why hasn't Beast Sovereign appeared? Could this be a conspiracy?" Chang Xian asked nervously. She carefully recalled the details of this war. The more she thought about it, the more she felt that something was wrong. Zhou Xuanji continued, "Just wait and see. Beast Sovereign will appear. At that time, he will definitely shock the Kunlun Origin Court." The reason why he dared to say this was that he had seen Beast Sovereign leave the Kunlun Origin Court. He even appeared in Sovereign Kong Sheng's independent plane. His whereabouts were very secretive. In his opinion, Beast Sovereign must have something to do with Sovereign Kong Sheng's death. Perhaps there was a mysterious and powerful existence plotting against the Kunlun Origin Court. After all, Sovereign Wu Zhou had also said that he had enemies outside the Kunlun Origin Court. Chang Xian wanted to say something but hesitated. In the end, she chose to leave. Zhou Xuanji suddenly opened his eyes. The corner of his mouth rose as he murmured, "Very good. You are actually plotting against me. You will regret it." Chapter 865. Zhou Xuanji saw Beast Sovereign appear around the Emperor Sword Divine Range. He was shrouded in black qi, hiding his true appearance. Beast Sovereign seemed to be looking for something. He kept wandering around the Emperor Sword Divine Range. If not for Zhou Xuanji's powerful exterminating divine eyes, he might not have been able to see him. At least, the guards of the Emperor Sword Divine Range did not notice his appearance. After a long while, Beast Sovereign left. He didn't take anything with him, nor did he leave any traces. Zhou Xuanji, who was in the palace, noticed his murderous intent. This fellow was already eyeing the Emperor Sword Divine Range. "Originally, I didn't want to be your enemy. However, if you want to harm Emperor Sword Divine Range, then don't bother about me." Zhou Xuanji muttered to himself. He had already repaid the kindness that the Evil Sky Divine Range had given him. He didn't feel the slightest bit guilty facing Beast Sovereign. He had saved the Evil Sky Divine Range and Beast Sovereign. The debt of gratitude had been repaid. If they wanted to start a war, then so be it. After that, Zhou Xuanji closed his eyes and continued to cultivate. The battle between the Void Boundary Palace and the Evil Sky Divine Range continued. The Origin Court didn't intervene, as if they didn't know about it. All the divine ranges were paying attention to this matter. Most of them were curious. After all, the Void Boundary Palace was under the jurisdiction of the Origin Court, which was equivalent to the Imperial Court of the mortal world. The Evil Sky Divine Range was just a city. Could it be that Beast Sovereign had offended the Origin Court? The news of Beast Sovereign being imprisoned by the 12 Law Ancestors was quickly dug out. The news of Zhou Xuanji rescuing Beast Sovereign was also spread by some people, causing an uproar in the Kunlun Origin Court. The Void Boundary Hall's Void Boundary Emperors, Void Boundary Gods, Void Boundary War Gods, and Void Boundary Heavenly Venerables came from different divine ranges. In a short period of time, there were hundreds of divine ranges attacking the Evil Sky Divine Range. In the past, the Evil Sky Divine Range was so overbearing that it had made countless enemies. Now that the Origin Court's Void Boundary Palace was attacking them, those enemies naturally came to beat them when they were down. The successive defeats of the Evil Sky Divine Range caused the enemies to surround the Evil Sky Divine Range. At first glance, the entire starry sky was filled with the figures of people fighting. In the void outside the Emperor Sword Divine Range, a young man in blue stood with a curved sword in his hand. He shouted, "Zhou Xuanji, come out and fight!" As his voice fell, he unleashed the aura of his Origin Fusion Divine Lord Seven Lights. Boom! The surrounding space twisted, as if it was being roasted by a high temperature. After a few moments, a figure flew out from the Emperor Sword Divine Range. It was Xian Xianghua. You want to challenge my husband? Are you qualified? Xian Xianghua raised her palm, and the chi of the mortal world condensed into a heavenly demon. It was as tall as a world, and it slapped out. The blue-clothed youth frowned, and quickly raised his sword to block the attack. Meanwhile, in the cultivation palace, Zhou Xuanji was communicating with Little Sovereign. TSK, your little wife is really fierce, aggressive and ambitious. Not bad, not bad. During this time, more than one person had come to challenge Zhou Xuanji, but they were all repelled by Xian Xianghua and Zhou Tanhua. The Demon Sovereign and the Small Sword Emperor were already rather famous. Zhou Xuanji shook his head and said, "Don't bother about her. Tell me, does my energy technique work?" Recently, he had been creating a new cultivation method of his own. Using the Greatly Divine Suppressor art and the World Buddha art as the foundation, he created his own divine technique. Heavenly Separation Saint Suppressing Yuan Slaughtering Art. At first glance, it was obvious that the name was randomly created. The Heavenly Distant Saint Suppressing Origin Slaughtering Art is not bad, but it requires a great fortune to accelerate its growth. You opened it with the origin of your soul. If you want to create it directly, you will need an even stronger divine power. Let's go. It seems like we have to absorb another origin rule. It seems that we have to absorb another origin law. Little Sovereign touched his chin and said in a hesitant tone. Zhou Xuanji's eyes lit up as he asked, "Where is it?" There is an independent plane outside the Kunlun Origin Court. It is a place of inheritance left by a sovereign. It might be able to cultivate a sovereign candidate in the future. But since you need it, I will give it to you first. Little Sovereign replied helplessly. Little Sovereign replied helplessly. He felt that he had fallen into a pit. Why did he start to obey this kid now? Does he think of this kid as his son? If Zhou Xuanji knew what he was thinking, he would definitely go berserk. How much do you know about such a place of inheritance? Zhou Xuanji's eyes lit up as he asked curiously. He was trying to hold back his excitement. If I can absorb a few origin laws, wouldn't I become extremely powerful? Little Sovereign glared at him and scolded with a smile. Greedy. Are you ready? We can go now. Zhou Xuanji nodded and immediately disappeared. After leaving the Emperor Sword Divine Range, he saw that Xian Xianghua and the young man in blue were still fighting. Even if her cultivation was inferior to the other party, Xian Xianghua was still very strong. She wasn't injured. The mortal chi was indeed powerful. It could corrode the enemy's divine power. Zhou Xuanji's eyes narrowed as he cast the suppressing the universe. He focused his mind on the young man in blue, accurately locking onto him. The young man in blue paused. Xian Xianghua followed suit and slapped him with her palm. There was a loud bang. The young man in blue was sent flying back, vomiting blood. Xian Xianghua was about to follow up with another attack when he suddenly shattered the void and disappeared into the turbulence of time and space. Xian Xianghua was stunned. She cursed, gritting her teeth. He escaped. At the same time, in the turbulence of time and space, Zhou Xuanji grabbed the young man in blue, lifted him by the shoulder, and flew with him. The young man in blue looked up in horror. When he saw Zhou Xuanji, his expression changed drastically. How can it be? He was shocked by Zhou Xuanji's strength. Facing Zhou Xuanji, he felt that he was facing his ancestor. The next time you come to the Emperor Sword Divine Range, you will die, Zhou Xuanji said calmly, looking straight ahead. After speaking, he threw the young man in blue into the turbulence of time and space, into the unknown universe. Zhou Xuanji continued to move forward. He took out the Lesser Supreme Sword as Little Sovereign's soul emerged. Use your Absolute Time Realm with the Absolute Time Realm, instructed Little Sovereign. Zhou Xuanji immediately did as he was told. With a thought, he directly entered the Absolute Time Realm. With the Absolute Time Realm, he could easily enter the Absolute Time Realm through the turbulence of time and space. The Absolute Time Realm wasn't the only and fixed existence. It was more like a manifestation of a realm. Meditate and keep chanting the Great Phoenix Ruins Realm. At the same time, spread out your divine will, continued Little Sovereign. Little Sovereign continued. He closed his eyes and began to mobilize his soul power. Great Phoenix Ruins Realm. Zhou Xuanji raised his brow. He felt that this name was familiar. He seemed to have seen it in the History Pavilion of the Evil Sky Divine Range. However, he couldn't remember the specific information. He chanted the name again and again. His divine will spread out, covering the entire Absolute Time Realm. After about half an incense stick of time, a space-time crack suddenly appeared in front of him. Zhou Xuanji didn't need Little Sovereign's reminder to know that it was the Great Phoenix Ruins Realm. He turned into a sword light and dove into it. When he landed again, he came to a cliff. Below him was a dense forest with undulating mountains. As far as the eye could see, celestial mist filled the air, resembling dragons and tigers. The sky was cloudless. The scenery was magnificent and refreshing. At first glance, the Great Phoenix Ruins Realm didn't seem too special. Zhou Xuanji suddenly turned his head and saw a figure standing on the top of a high mountain next to him. His eyes widened as he said in a trembling voice, "How is this possible?" Chapter 866. Shen Nianxing, why is she here? Is she really still alive? Zhou Xuanji frowned as he looked at the figure on the top of the mountain. His face was a little gloomy. When he saw Shen Nianxing again, he was pleasantly surprised at first, but then he became vigilant. Shen Nianxing looked the same as before, but she was exuding an aura that made his heart palpitate. She was even more terrifying than Mortal Sovereign. TSK, this pair of sisters are amazing. They both have great opportunities. Little Sovereign sighed with emotion. Little Sovereign sighed with emotion, but his expression was a bit solemn. Shen Nianxing is very dangerous. Although she looked like a girl, she was no longer as playful and lively as before. Her face was cold, and her eyes were filled with killing intent. She wasn't looking at Zhou Xuanji, but at the depths of the Great Phoenix Ruins Realm. It was unknown what she was looking at. Don't go there. I feel something wrong, Little Sovereign warned. Little Sovereign reminded, his eyes suddenly becoming sharp. He narrowed his eyes and whispered, "This aura is so familiar. I seem to have met it before." The more he thought about it, the more he felt that something was wrong. At this moment, Shen Nianxing suddenly turned around and looked at Zhou Xuanji and Little Sovereign. Before the two of them could come back to their senses, Shen Nianxing had already appeared in front of Zhou Xuanji. She used her hand as a knife, and her fingertips stopped in front of his throat. "Hey, have we met somewhere?" Shen Nianxing asked, staring at Zhou Xuanji's face, as if she wanted to remember something. Zhou Xuanji was just about to speak when Little Sovereign answered first. We haven't. We just accidentally broke into this place. Little Sovereign smiled, pretending to be calm. Zhou Xuanji was surprised. Could it be that Shen Nianxing has lost her memory, or has her body been possessed? An existence that can make Little Sovereign so flustered is definitely not a simple character. Really? I think I know him. I don't know why, but I actually like him. This feeling isn't good. I must kill him, Shen Nianxing said, staring at Little Sovereign with a faint smile. Shen Nianxing stared at Little Supreme, being with a smile that wasn't a smile. After that, she patted Little Supreme Being's soul with her right hand, and directly dispersed it. Zhou Xuanji subconsciously dodged, but he was still slapped to the ground by Shen Nianxing's palm. Cracks began to appear on the mountain like a spider web. Just as Zhou Xuanji was about to stand up, Shen Nianxing stepped on his chest. Layers of black light appeared from the soles of her feet, covering his body. He wanted to stand up, but he couldn't move at all. Shen Nianxing looked down at him and sneered. You still want to escape? Your cultivation is only at Origin Fusion Divine Lord 8 realms, but your strength surpasses that of an ordinary Origin Source Sovereign. It's a pity that you're just a mortal in front of me. Previously, your Kunlun Origin Court's Sovereign Kong Sheng was killed by me. All of his supreme divine power belongs to me. Zhou Xuanji's pupils contracted. She killed Supreme Venerable Kong Sheng? He took a deep breath, stared at Shen Nianxing and said, Do you want to understand your relationship with me? With the overbearing strength displayed by Shen Nianxing, she could easily kill him, but she did not do so. This was enough to explain her inner thoughts. Speak. Shen Nianxing ordered expressionlessly as her right foot moved away. Zhou Xuanji didn't hesitate to tell them about his previous experience with Shen Tang and Shen Nianxing. He spoke very calmly and did not deliberately express anything. After he finished speaking, Shen Nianxing sneered. Looking for me? Did that stupid sister think she was amazing just because she became a mortal supremacy? She's nothing in front of us. Her gaze fell on Zhou Xuanji again, and her eyes flickered. She was considering whether to kill Zhou Xuanji. After a while she smiled again. Her smile was very dangerous. Very well, then I will let you live, Shen Nianxing said with a smile. With a wave of her right hand, the black light patterns on Zhou Xuanji's body dissipated. Zhou Xuanji then stood up straight. Zhou Xuanji wasn't surprised. Instead he asked, Can you tell me, why did you spare my life? Shen Nianxing brushed past him and walked to the front, looking at the horizon. That thing is coming out. Hearing this, Zhou Xuanji was curious. What could make Shen Nianxing so concerned? Could it be that the sovereign of the Great Phoenix Ruins realm is still alive? From killing Supreme Venerable Kong Sheng, Shen Nianxing seemed to be looking for a sovereign to absorb the sovereign's divine power. Shen Nianxing was lost in thought. She didn't say a word. Zhou Xuanji felt a strong sense of oppression, which made his hair stand on end. He didn't dare to act rashly. He had thought of all kinds of scenes of meeting Shen Nianxing, but he had never thought that he would be in such a sorry state. What has she become? Zhou Xuanji frowned. At the same time, he called out to Little Sovereign in his heart. Little Sovereign wouldn't be killed so easily. He still had a remnant soul in the sword. After an hour, Shen Nianxing suddenly disappeared. Zhou Xuanji raised his brow. He was hesitating whether to escape or not. Just as this thought came to his mind, Shen Nianxing returned to him. She was holding a golden feathered rooster in her hand. It was as big as an eagle. She was clutching its neck. Its two eyes were bulging, filled with panic. This thing is transformed from the origin of the crimson flame. It contains the most overbearing energy in the world. After countless years, it has become a spirit. Now it has the cultivation of a great sovereign, Shen Nianxing introduced. Shen Nianxing introduced with a playful expression, which made Zhou Xuanji's heart twitch. Great sovereign. Someone as strong as great sovereign is being held in her hand like a chicken. This is too exaggerated. Zhou Xuanji was extremely curious. How can Shen Nianxing cultivate to such a level? Could it be that she has traveled through time far longer than Shen Tang? Shen Nianxing threw the golden feathered rooster to Zhou Xuanji and said, I will leave this guy to you. You can't let him escape, let alone let him die. The golden-feathered rooster fell into Zhou Xuanji's arms and cried, "I'm the golden-crowned divine lord. Don't humiliate me. I'm not a fowl." Shen Yinxing smiled disdainfully, deeply provoking the golden-crowned divine lord. However, his cultivation wasn't good enough. The golden-crowned divine lord could only endure it. The corner of Shen Yinxing's mouth rose as a green lotus appeared under her feet. She then left with Zhou Xuanji and the golden-crowned divine lord. Flying to the top of the Great Phoenix Ruins realm, she looked down. The mountains and rivers below were directly destroyed, destroying the world with a single glance. The Great Phoenix Ruins realm was like a broken dream, no longer existing. Zhou Xuanji only felt the scene in front of him change. Next, they came to a blue and red universe. He carefully observed his surroundings and found that there was no Tao energy here. Instead, it was filled with another extremely powerful energy gas. There were no stars, no world. Everything was in a state of nothingness. The golden-crowned divine lord sent a voice transmission to Zhou Xuanji. "Kid, you and I will join hands and escape together. If we are caught by this crazy woman, we will definitely die." Zhou Xuanji was indifferent. He didn't reply. With Shen Yinxing's ability, she could definitely spy on their voice transmission. Shen Yinxing snorted and said, "Escape? Not even 10 of you can escape." The golden-crowned divine lord trembled in fear. He didn't dare to speak anymore. Zhou Xuanji asked, "Where are we going?" Seeing his calm expression, the golden-crowned divine lord cursed in his heart. This little bastard is too adaptable to the wind. When Zhou Xuanji entered the Great Phoenix Ruins realm, he had already noticed it. His soul was smashed by Shen Yinxing, but this kid wasn't angry at all. He's too unyielding a coward. Chapter 867. Let's go to the hiding place of the next sovereign. I'm hunting great sovereigns. My goal is revenge, Shen Yinxing replied. She stood in front looking into the distance. No one knew what she was thinking. Zhou Xuanji became even more curious. Shen Yinxing is hunting great sovereigns. How strong are they? Zhou Xuanji remained silent. He couldn't imagine how a power far beyond that of a sovereign could be cultivated. The source law alone was broad and profound, giving him endless benefits. What kind of essence would a stronger power have? Zhou Xuanji fell into infinite reverie. The golden-crowned divine lord angrily rebuked. "You treacherous woman, you deserve to be hunted down." Shen Yinxing glanced at him, making him tremble in fear. He didn't dare to scold her anymore. Zhou Xuanji didn't laugh at him, but concentrated on thinking. The rules seem to be unfathomable, but they are just the foundation. If you perform well, I can help you surpass great sovereigns in the future and compete for the path of a true expert. Shen Yinxing turned around and said with a smile. Shen Yinxing turned around and smiled. Her smile was thought-provoking, as if she was just joking. Zhou Xuanji didn't dare to chuckle. He did feel a murderous aura from her before. At least, it showed that Shen Yinxing had killing intent toward him. She wasn't as loyal to him as Shen Tang. He sighed in his heart. Back then, Shen Yinxing worshipped him very much. Things are still the same, but people have changed. They continued moving forward. Along the way, Zhou Xuanji was looking for a way to escape. Unfortunately, Shen Yinxing was keeping a close eye on him, and the golden-crowned divine lord. They couldn't do anything at all. The golden-crowned divine lord also settled down. He was no longer stubborn. About 7 days had passed. They came to another independent plain. Here the wind and sand were everywhere. The sky was the sea. It made people feel as if the world had turned upside down. The strong wind was blowing. The golden-crowned divine lord shivered. He couldn't help but shout, "There are no source laws here. Why don't you give up?" The sand here was very hard. Even with their physical strength, it was difficult to bear. Zhou Xuanji was feeling this special sandstorm. Shen Yinxing brought them here, which meant that there must be a great sovereign hiding here. Could it be that the special sandstorm here is the power of a great sovereign? Shen Yinxing flew while looking around. Suddenly, Zhou Xuanji felt a powerful divine will sweep past him. It was so powerful that it made him shudder. The golden-crowned divine lord's hair stood on end like a golden hedgehog. "Humph! How dare you barge into my world? You're courting death." A cold snort sounded out, and it was incomparably dull. Shen Nianxing immediately disappeared. Bang! Suddenly, there was a deafening explosion in front of them, only to see the sandstorm swirling up, a blinding light expanding rapidly. Zhou Xuanji activated his exterminating divine eyes and looked carefully. He could vaguely see two figures crossing each other in the bright light. Shen Nianxing and a mysterious Grand Supreme. This time, Shen Nianxing was unable to directly suppress the other party, and the two sides were locked in battle. Zhou Xuanji and the Golden Crown Divine Lord quickly stepped back. The might of the battle made them shudder in fear. If Shen Nianxing started a war in front of them, they would probably be wiped out in an instant. Could there be such a huge gap in the strength of grand sovereigns? Zhou Xuanji asked with gritted teeth. His words almost made Golden Crown Divine Lord vomit blood. He roared, "Are you looking down on me? If it weren't for that bitch, I would have killed you with a slap. Her opponent is a tough one. It looks like she's going to lose." Having heard this, Zhou Xuanji was not surprised. If Shen Nianxing died, could they escape? No. This grand sovereign would kill them to vent his anger. Golden Crown Divine Lord was also terrified. Shen Nianxing alone gave him a headache. If there was an even more terrifying existence, wouldn't they be dead for sure? No. I can't sit still and wait for death. Golden Crown Divine Lord gritted his teeth. He suddenly looked back at Zhou Xuanji. His eyes widened as he transmitted his voice. "Quickly pour your supreme divine power into my body, and help me break the seal. We must take this opportunity to escape." Zhou Xuanji frowned. He only hesitated for half a second before he slammed his palm on Golden Crown Divine Lord. He could endure it before, but he couldn't now. Shen Nianxing's aura was being suppressed. If this continued, she would lose without a doubt. As his supreme divine power entered Golden Crown Divine Lord's body, the golden feathers of Golden Crown Divine Lord fluttered. "No way! Is this all you've got?" Golden Crown Divine Lord cried in dissatisfaction. Zhou Xuanji wanted to strangle him, but things had already come to this. There was no point in arguing. Zhou Xuanji had no choice but to use the sword fusion technique. His aura soared as the violent and boundless supreme divine power wantonly rushed into Golden Crown Divine Lord's body. "Oh, so cool!" Golden Crown Divine Lord cried in a strange voice. Zhou Xuanji felt goosebumps all over his body. This guy, he really deserves a beating. "Little girl, you dare to have killing intent towards me with such little strength? Today I will suck your soul. You have no chance to regret it." The dull voice sounded again. His words were filled with bone-chilling killing intent, dropping the temperature of this independent plane to the freezing point. Boom, boom, boom. The entire world was exploding. So was Golden Crown Divine Lord's body. Zhou Xuanji's supreme divine power was trying to break his seal. But Shen Nianxing's divine power was too strong. Zhou Xuanji's supreme divine power couldn't break through at all. He frowned and said in a deep voice, "No, I can't help you." Trash. Golden Crown Divine Lord was flustered and exasperated. He immediately cursed Zhou Xuanji. Zhou Xuanji's eyes turned cold when he heard this. He immediately reversed the technique and began to absorb Golden Crown Divine Lord's divine power. Golden Crown Divine Lord's expression changed drastically. He furiously cursed, "Brat! You dare to offend your superior?" Zhou Xuanji laughed. This guy must be a fool. Zhou Xuanji didn't stop. Instead, he sped up the absorption. His cultivation began to grow rapidly. He had wanted to do this for a long time. Since Golden Crown Divine Lord was willing to help him, he wouldn't stand on ceremony. Shen Nianxing was still fighting over there, while Golden Crown Divine Lord kept cursing. As time went by, his cursing became less and less confident, until the time it takes for half an incense stick to burn. "I was wrong. Bro. Dad. Grandpa. Please forgive me." Golden Crown Divine Lord wailed. He had become unprincipled. He was like a different chicken, compared to his previous arrogant self. Zhou Xuanji ignored him, and continued to absorb. He planned to take this opportunity to break through to Origin Fusion Divine Lord Jiuming. Golden Crown Divine Lord became more and more desperate. "It's over. I'm going to die in this kid's hands. How unfair. Unfair." He roared hysterically in his heart. His eyes seemed to be a little moist. At this moment, Shen Nianqing suddenly appeared in front of them. She wrapped them with her divine power and quickly took them away from this world. Want to escape? It's not that easy. The dull voice snorted. Immediately, Zhou Xuanji felt a horrifying murderous intent coming from behind. It made him feel like he was in a cold cellar. His invincible saint body stiffened. Boom! Zhou Xuanji felt a heavy blow from behind. He immediately fainted. Before his consciousness disappeared, he vaguely heard Golden Crown Divine Lords cursing. I'm not convinced. Zhou Xuanji found Chang Xian and asked her about what had happened during this time. He had been worried that Beast Sovereign would attack the Emperor Sword Divine Range. However, Chang Xian told him that the Evil Sky Divine Range had already been defeated. The entire Divine Range had been flattened and collapsed. It was very miserable. As for Beast Sovereign, he never showed up from beginning to end. Now the Evil Sky Divine Range no longer existed. Its name had been erased from the history of the Kunlun Origin Court. Most of the original living beings of the Evil Sky Divine Range had died, and the remaining ones were hiding like street rats. Master, the Void Boundary Palace's target doesn't just seem to be the Evil Sky Divine Range. They have begun to attack other super divine ranges. It seems that the Origin Court is going to purge them. Chang Xian said with a frown. She had no feelings for the Void Boundary Palace. Zhou Xuanji asked, "Is there any movement from the sovereign divine ranges?" Chang Xian shook her head and said, "No, they are all recuperating and cultivating in seclusion." Zhou Xuanji fell into deep thought. After a while, "Go contact the Tianyi Divine Range and invite Nama Tianyi to come as a guest," Zhou Xuanji instructed. Zhou Xuanji instructed. Upon hearing this, Chang Xian nodded. He then waved his hand, motioning for Chang Xian to leave. When he was the only one left in the palace, he sighed and said, "Kunlun Origin Court? You think you are the highest existence, but you don't know that there are many terrifying existences lurking outside. Your fight is just a joke." He closed his eyes and began cultivating. After absorbing the divine power of Golden Crown Divine Lord, he was only one step away from Origin Fusion Divine Lord 9th Enlightenment. Once the breakthrough was successful, his strength would soar. 10 days later, Zhou Xuanji broke through to Origin Fusion Divine Lord 9th Enlightenment. He didn't need to go through the tribulation. Everything seemed so calm. Even the people inside the Emperor Sword Divine Range didn't notice his breakthrough. He didn't walk out of the cultivation palace, but continued to adjust the supreme divine power in his body, until Nama Tianyi came to visit. The two gathered in a pavilion. Chang Xian prepared wine and dishes for the two to talk alone. Nama Tianyi exclaimed in admiration, "Origin Fusion Divine Lord 9th Enlightenment, how did you cultivate?" If it was in the past, he would definitely be amazed. But now, he felt that Zhou Xuanji's achievements were reasonable. After all, this kid would be the next sovereign. It's just a small opportunity. I want to ask you, what opportunity did you, young Heavenly Lord, and Wang Buao get? Did it come from outside the Kunlun Origin Court? The Kunlun Origin Court isn't at peace yet. Zhou Xuanji shook his head and asked with a smile. He had been thinking about this question before. Nama Tianyi's aura was very strange. It gave him the feeling that he was facing the energy outside the court. Each plane outside the court had different energy, and most of them were stronger than the Kunlun Origin Court. Nama Tianyi's aura was incompatible with the spiritual qi and Tao energy of the Kunlun Origin Court. He was constantly devouring the spiritual qi and Tao energy around him. Even if he tried his best to restrain himself, Zhou Xuanji could still clearly feel it. Did your opportunity also come from outside the Kunlun Origin Court? Nama Tianyi asked curiously. He carefully observed Zhou Xuanji and found that the kid's essence, qi and spirit had changed significantly. Zhou Xuanji nodded, and then told him about his experiences during this period of time. He hid his relationship with Shen Nianqing, and only talked about his experiences. Nam Matiani was dumbfounded after listening to him. Are there so many great sovereigns? Nam Matiani was drenched in cold sweat. He felt conceited because of his breakthrough. But after listening to Zhou Xuanji, he realized that he was still a frog in the well. Zhou Xuanji continued, the recent actions of the Void Boundary and the disappearance of Beast Sovereign may be related to the outside world. As the range master of the Sovereign Range, not only must you be careful, but you also can't ignore it. It's best to ask the Law Ancestors what they mean. Don't be used by evil. Nam Matiani solemnly nodded. The Kunlun Origin Court had experienced so many disasters during this period of time. He was also very worried that something bad would happen. Thinking of this, Nam Matiani no longer had the mood to drink. He found an opportunity, got up and said, in that case, I will go find the 12 Law Ancestors now. Zhou Xuanji nodded, and Nam Matiani disappeared from the building. It seems that his opportunity also told him something. Zhou Xuanji shook the wine glass and murmured to himself. Zhou Xuanji swirled the wine glass and mumbled to himself. His eyes fell on the surface of the wine in the glass, as though he was peeking into another world. After Nam Matiani left, Zhou Xuanji continued to cultivate in the following days. Shen Yanqing didn't come to disturb him either. Everything fell into a state of tranquility. It seemed easy, but Zhou Xuanji felt the pressure. The peace was broken by Zhou Tanhua's visit. Chapter 870. Father, I have something to ask you. Hearing Zhou Tanhua shout outside the hall, Zhou Xuanji opened his eyes and said, come in. Zhou Tanhua rarely took the initiative to disturb Ning Cheng's practice. But today he was making a fuss. It seemed that there was really an urgent matter. Ever since Zhou Xuanji returned from outside the court, he had paid less attention to Zhou Tanhua. At this moment he felt a little regretful. He wanted to nurture Zhou Tanhua into the range master of the Emperor Sword Divine Range. Zhou Tanhua pushed the door open, closed it, and quickly walked up to Zhou Xuanji. He hurriedly bowed and looked up, saying, Father, Mother went to find trouble with the mortal divine range. Zhou Xuanji heard him, and immediately got up with his eyes wide open. What's going on? Is she crazy? Zhou Xuanji asked furiously. Xian Xianghua's cultivation was increasing day by day, but the mortal divine range was the sovereign divine range. How could she fight with the mortal divine range? Zhou Tanhua gritted his teeth and said, she said she wanted to collect the mortal qi. I wanted to stop her, but she used her exterminating divine eyes to stop me. By the time I broke free, she had already disappeared. Nonsense! Zhou Xuanji cried out before disappearing on the spot. Zhou Tanhua still wanted to chase after him, but he was shocked to find that he couldn't track his father's whereabouts at all. He had thought that he was strong enough. Even if he wasn't as strong as his father, he wasn't at a level where he couldn't catch up to him. But now, as expected, my cultivation is still not enough. Zhou Tanhua smiled bitterly. He immediately left and prepared to go into seclusion. The other side, Zhou Xuanji rushed toward the mortal divine range. At the same time, he activated the exterminating divine eyes, trying to establish a connection with Xian Xianghua. Their exterminating divine eyes were connected, but as Xian Xianghua became a mortal god, the connection between them also decreased. Not only Xian Xianghua, but even Zhou Xuanji was the same. They had an even more powerful force suppressing the god exterminating eyes. Soon, Zhou Xuanji accurately sensed Xian Xianghua's aura. He immediately rushed forward. Right now, Xian Xianghua was fighting with 3 Essence Fusion Divine Lords. They all had the cultivation of Essence Fusion Divine Lord Erming. They surrounded Xian Xianghua, but they were unable to gain any advantage. In fact, they were even injured. Zhou Xuanji let out a sigh of relief. Just as he was about to rush over, a figure sped over. He glanced over and saw that it was Shen Yanqing. Her speed was very fast, and she quickly grabbed Xian Xianghua. Her left hand clasped Xian Xianghua's wrist, and with a wave of her right hand, the 3 Essence Fusion Divine Lords were killed and turned into ashes. What do you want? Zhou Xuanji angrily rebuked. He wanted to stop her, but Shen Yanqing pulled Xian Xianghua behind her. She sneered. You want to save your wife? Xian Xianghua was shocked. She wanted to struggle, but she found that she couldn't move, and she couldn't mobilize the mortal divine power in her body. She looked at Shen Nianqing in horror. Who is this woman? Don't mess around. I did save you before. Zhou Xuanji said with a deep voice, his eyes flashing with a cold light. If Shen Nianqing dared to harm Xian Xianghua, then he would no longer care about their past friendship. He would definitely kill Shen Nianqing in this life. When Shen Nianqing saw his expression, she couldn't help but curl her lips and snort. Do you have such feelings for my poor sister? Zhou Xuanji was silent and did not reply. He stared fixedly at her. Xian Xianghua was very confused. Who is this woman's sister? At this time, Shen Nianqing suddenly let go of Xian Xianghua and said to her with a smile, Your mortal god changed halfway. Your aura is not pure at all. It seems that you are related to my poor sister. After all, you both serve the same husband. That's why she can treat you with all her heart. As soon as she said this, Xian Xianghua's expression changed drastically. She subconsciously looked at Zhou Xuanji with a strange look in her eyes. She had always respected mortal sovereign and regarded him as her master. She didn't expect that the cold and powerful mortal sovereign would like Zhou Xuanji. No wonder, Xian Xianghua's expression became more and more strange. Her gaze made Zhou Xuanji feel pressured. He said in a deep voice, Shen Nianqing, what are you going to do? Are you trying to tease me? Tease you? Shen Nianqing burst into laughter, as if she had heard the biggest joke in the world. Xian Xianghua looked for an opportunity, and immediately fled behind Zhou Xuanji. A figure suddenly appeared in front of Shen Nianqing. As the mortal qi exploded, mortal sovereign Shen Tang appeared. She looked excited, and wanted to hug Shen Nianqing. However, Shen Nianqing avoided her. Shen Nianqing grabbed mortal sovereign's wrist and said with a sneer, Poor thing, you finally came out. After cultivating for so long, why haven't you broken through to great sovereign lord? If you had come to me earlier, you might have been far stronger than you are now. This shows that Zhou Xuanji is more important than me in your heart. Mortal sovereign hurriedly explained. It's not like that, Nianqing, listen to me. Explain what? You just want to use your lack of strength as an excuse. Shen Nianqing said impatiently. She was furious when she saw mortal sovereign. She squeezed her right hand, causing mortal sovereign to frown. Zhou Xuanji said, We have the same root. Shut up. Shen Nianqing shouted. After that, she grabbed mortal sovereign's neck and threatened. If you dare to talk nonsense again, I will break her neck and make you regret it. Zhou Xuanji was speechless. Why did he feel like he was watching a melodramatic drama? Mortal sovereign couldn't break free from her grip. She was so powerful in the Kunlun origin court. But at this moment, in the hands of Shen Nianqing, she was like a defenseless mortal. She looked very weak. Without waiting for Zhou Xuanji to speak again, Shen Nianqing left with mortal sovereign, disappearing into thin air without leaving any aura behind. Zhou Xuanji turned around, looked at Xian Xianghua and said seriously, Don't mess around in the future. Think about the situation just now. If you do it again, you will die. He felt that it was necessary to teach this woman a lesson. She was really getting more and more arrogant. She actually dared to challenge the sovereign divine range alone. Xian Xianghua asked with a smile that wasn't a smile. What if I meet your little lover next time? The corner of Zhou Xuanji's mouth twitched. Come back with me first, and then I will deal with you. Zhou Xuanji took Xian Xianghua into his arms and flew toward the Emperor Sword Divine Range. Xian Xianghua asked with a frown. What about mortal sovereign? Aren't you afraid that something bad will happen to her? They are sisters. If Shen Nianqing wanted to kill her, she would have done it just now. Why take her away? Zhou Xuanji replied indifferently. If Shen Nianqing really hated mortal sovereign, she would have made mortal sovereign suffer just now. But she didn't. She just captured her. Xian Xianghua nodded. She was full of curiosity about the relationship between Shen Nianqing and mortal sovereign. She began to ask Zhou Xuanji. Zhou Xuanji didn't hide anything. While flying toward the Emperor Sword Divine Range, he told her about his experience in Anti-Kunlun. By the time they returned to the Emperor Sword Divine Range, he had also finished telling the story. Women are really affectionate. Even time and space can't isolate their affection for you, Xian Xianghua said with a teasing smile. At the same time, she fell into deep thought. She could have what she had today, because of the celestial devil rebirth technique passed down by her ancestors. And this technique was created by mortal sovereign. Everything was destined. Even the space beneath his feet was transparent. He slowly turned around and looked behind him. His body suddenly stiffened, because he saw a figure. It was Autark Crimson Dust. At this moment, Autark Crimson Dust wasn't wearing any clothes, and was in the middle of cultivating. His snow-white body and his fluttering black hair caused his heart to skip a beat, and he hurriedly retracted his gaze. You were imprisoned here by her? Zhou Xuanji asked with his back facing mortal sovereign. In the darkness, he could clearly hear Supreme Crimson Dust's breathing, and he could even feel her warmth. Supreme Crimson Dust didn't answer him. After a while, a soft body suddenly hugged him from behind, causing his body to stiffen even more. He frowned and asked, "What do you want to do?" He couldn't help but wonder if Supreme Hongqian had been bewitched by Xin Yanqing. She wants to humiliate me by helping you become stronger. She doesn't know that I have this plan all along, Supreme Crimson Dust replied softly. Autark Crimson Dust replied softly, his voice no longer as cold as it usually was. She began to pull Zhou Xuanji's clothes. He resisted instinctively, trying to avoid her. Don't move. Don't you want to break through to Origin Fusion Divine Lord 10 Enlightened? I will help you and help you become the sovereign of the Kunlun Origin Court. Anyway, I see that she is still alive. I have no regrets, Supreme Crimson Dust said softly, hugging Zhou Xuanji tightly. Just when Zhou Xuanji wanted to refuse, she suddenly covered his mouth, stood on her tiptoes, and whispered in his ear. This is the cultivation method that you and I should have done. Are you really going to refuse? This is also a good thing for me. After all, you have the soul origin. As far as I am concerned, it is not a loss. She suddenly burst out her divine power of the mortal world, drowning Zhou Xuanji like warm water. An uncontrollable desire rose from the bottom of Zhou Xuanji's heart. His eyes burst out with purple light, illuminating the dark space. What's going on? Zhou Xuanji was horrified in his heart. He tried to suppress this desire, but to no avail. Supreme Crimson Dust's hands then touched his chest, completely igniting the flame in his heart. Inside the hall, Shen Nianqing was sitting on a stone seat covered with animal skin. She supported her chin with her right hand. Her eyes flickered. No one knew what she was looking at. She had a strange smile on her face. She licked her lips and murmured, "Interesting." At this moment, Golden Crown Divine Lord's voice came from outside. "Bitch, I have already washed it. Do you want to stew or roast it? It's up to you." Golden Crown Divine Lord's tone was full of pride. He wasn't afraid of death at all. He even began to kick the gate of the Black Castle, shaking the Black Castle. Shen Nianqing let out a cold snort. With a wave of her right hand, a black shadow flew out of her sleeve, and quickly flew out of the Black Castle. "Ah! What are you doing? Bitch, you are crazy. You can kill me, but you can't humiliate me. Ah, I'm going to kill you." Golden Crown Divine Lord's scream resounded. He was surrounded by black chi as his golden feathers were thrown away. In less than 10 breaths, he turned into a featherless chicken. His fleshy wings wrapped tightly around his body. He squatted on the ground, shivering. He was crying. He had lived for so long, but had never suffered such humiliation. He was the Crimson Flame origin. He lowered his head. His eyes were bloodshot as he gnashed his teeth and murmured, "Shen Nianqing, just you wait." Boom! A strong wind blew in his face, sending him flying backward while vomiting blood. His body was like a ball, rolling along the ground and crashing into the woods. It was unknown whether he was dead or alive. A few days later, the Black Castle shook violently as a terrifying aura erupted. It was Zhou Xuanji. He had forcefully broken through to Origin Fusion Divine Lord 10 Enlightened. A horrifying pressure shrouded the entire island. Golden Crown Divine Lord, who was sleeping in the grass, suddenly opened his eyes. He cried out in shock. How is this possible? In his opinion, Zhou Xuanji's fate was the same as his, a prisoner. Why could Zhou Xuanji still break through? It's unfair. At the same time, inside the palace, Shen Nianxing nodded with satisfaction and said in amazement, "This method is very suitable for cultivation. I can use him as a cauldron for my cultivation in the future." Clang! A sword chi appeared out of thin air, tearing the space apart and creating a black crack. The sword chi rushed up and broke through the top of the castle. Next, Zhou Xuanji flew out of the black crack with Mortal Sovereign in his arms. He was wearing white clothes and a black robe wrapped around Mortal Sovereign's body. Mortal Sovereign was nestled in his arms. His eyes were closed as if he was sleeping. Chapter 872. Do you like this kind of cultivation method? Shen Nianxing asked with a smile, leaning back on the stone seat lazily. Zhou Xuanji said expressionlessly, "Did you do it?" He looked calm, but he was helpless in his heart. He really couldn't control himself before. "I just did you a favor." "Why? You don't want to admit it after putting on your pants?" Shen Nianxing said with a sarcastic smile. Zhou Xuanji stared at her. Swords of light appeared around him, pointing at her, ready to attack at any time. "You are not my opponent. Don't make trouble for yourself," Shen Nianxing provoked. Shen Nianxing provoked, which made Zhou Xuanji narrow his eyes. At this time, Mortal Sovereign in his arms slowly opened her eyes and said, "Forget it." She looked at Shen Nianxing with gentle eyes and said, "Nianxing, no matter what, I am very happy now because I found you. I am relieved to see that you are stronger than me." Shen Nianxing snorted and said in a bad mood, "What are you talking about? You are happy for the man next to you. Look at you in his arms. You are really shameless. You can leave, but he has to stay." With a wave of her right hand, Mortal Sovereign uncontrollably left Zhou Xuanji's arms. Zhou Xuanji wanted to catch her, but he couldn't. Even if he had reached the Origin Fusion Divine Lord 10th Realm, he was helpless. Mortal Sovereign quickly put on the black robe given by Zhou Xuanji. She looked back, but she could no longer see Zhou Xuanji. She was directly sent out of the Black Castle. She frowned, and could only watch the Black Castle getting farther and farther away from her. Not long after, she was sent to the depths of the universe by Shen Nianxing's supreme divine power. Inside the hall, Zhou Xuanji looked at Shen Nianxing with a calm expression and asked, "What do you want to do?" After breaking through to the Origin Fusion Divine Lord 10th Realm, Shen Nianxing was still unfathomable in his eyes. This unfathomable feeling made him uncontrollably nervous. He tried hard not to show this nervousness. He wanted to be calm and collected. "What do I want to do?" "Naturally, I want to do what you were doing before," Shen Nianxing said with a teasing smile. Shen Nianxing teased. Zhou Xuanji couldn't help but frown. He didn't take it seriously. He felt that Shen Nianxing was teasing him and mocking him. Shen Nianxing stopped smiling and asked, "Do you want to become a supreme being?" Zhou Xuanji nodded. There was nothing to hide about this. After all, he had not become the sovereign. "I'll be leaving soon. If you can become a sovereign, then I'll come back to find you. I'll have you accompany me to hunt grand sovereigns. I won't let you do it for nothing. I'll impart my cultivation technique to you. Before that, I have to leave. I'll leave the Scarlet Flame Essence to you. Take good care of it. I'll come back to inspect it." Shen Nianxing stood up and said slowly, "I'll leave this island in your care for the time being. This place is very suitable for cultivating supreme god force." As her voice fell, Shen Nianxing stepped down. Zhou Xuanji frowned. Just as he was about to speak, Shen Nianxing disappeared. He was stunned and spread out his divine sense to cover the entire island, but he could no longer capture Shen Nianxing's aura. She really left. Zhou Xuanji felt that everything was unreal. He was still thinking about how to get rid of Shen Nianxing, but he didn't expect her to leave just like that. It seemed that her injuries had healed, and she was in a hurry to hunt grand sovereigns. However, judging from Shen Nianxing's words, it would take a long time for her to come back again. After all, it was impossible for him to become a sovereign immediately. Zhou Xuanji sighed and flew out of the Black Castle. He first looked for Golden Crown Divine Lord. His expression turned weird. Golden Crown Divine Lord was napping on the ground. His body was bare and covered with big leaves. His fur. Zhou Xuanji almost laughed out loud. It must have been done by Xin Yinxing. This guy is really miserable. He didn't disturb Golden Crown Divine Lord, but went to look for Mortal Sovereign. After Shen Yinxing left, Mortal Sovereign regained her freedom. She was rushing to the island and met Zhou Xuanji head-on. As soon as she saw that Zhou Xuanji was safe and sound, she was pleasantly surprised. Zhou Xuanji was the same, but just as the two of them wanted to speak, they remembered the previous cultivation scene. They couldn't help but fall silent. What happened before? Zhou Xuanji wanted to say something but stopped on second thought. He wanted to say sorry, but when he thought about it carefully, it was Mortal Sovereign who took the initiative. However, Mortal Sovereign might have been controlled by Xin Yinxing. Mortal Sovereign shook her head and said, "No need to say more. For you, cultivation is the most important thing right now. Don't care about unnecessary romantic feelings." Zhou Xuanji was a little disappointed when he heard this. Generally speaking, shouldn't it be a man who says such things? Autarch Crimson Dust tightened his black robes and chuckled softly. It seems she has already left. Since that is the case, I'll go back and train as well. That cultivation technique earlier allowed me to comprehend the laws of the soul. After speaking, she turned around and left. Zhou Xuanji stayed in place and fell into contemplation. This pair of sisters were really sisters. They acted so swiftly and decisively, making him feel like he was abandoned. He shook his head and laughed as he rushed toward the Emperor Sword Divine Range. After a month, the 12 Law ancestors came to visit the Emperor Sword Divine Range. This alarmed the nearby divine ranges. The news spread quickly. Soon, the news about Zhou Xuanji's breakthrough to Origin Fusion Divine Lord 10 Enlightened spread like wildfire in the Kunlun Origin Court. Origin Fusion Divine Lord 10 Enlightened. Even the range masters of some super divine ranges might not have such cultivation. For a moment, the gloomy atmosphere resounded again. More and more creatures were spreading the news, hoping that all living beings could elect Zhou Xuanji as the sovereign. As long as the Kunlun Origin Court didn't have a sovereign, all living beings couldn't feel at ease. All living beings were looking forward to an indomitable expert standing at the top of the Origin Court to protect the order of the Origin Court and resist all kinds of catastrophes. The 12 Law ancestors stayed in the Emperor Sword Divine Range for 6 days before leaving. When they left, they all had smiles on their faces, looking very satisfied. In the meeting hall, Zhou Xuanji was chatting with the higher-ups of the Emperor Sword Divine Range. Ha ha ha. Now we should congratulate our master. He is no longer the first candidate for the sovereign, but the sovereign. Xiaohu burst into laughter, as if he had become the sovereign himself. Zhou Xiaoxian stood up in excitement and asked, "Father, can we announce this in advance?" Zhou Xuanji nodded with a smile. He was no longer afraid of anyone in the Kunlun Origin Court. Naturally, he had no scruples. After cultivating with Mortal Sovereign, his cultivation had soared. He even comprehended a trace of the mortal rule. Next, he could continue to grow stronger by comprehending the mortal rule. Zhou Xuanji instructed, "The Origin Court will prepare for the sovereign's ascension. You don't have to worry too much. Just take care of the Emperor Sword Divine Range. When I become the sovereign, the Emperor Sword Divine Range will be handed over to you. At that time, Tanhua will be the range master. The others will assist him. Also, gather all the disciples of the Emperor Sword Court who are wandering outside." He began arranging the positions of the Emperor Sword Divine Range. No one dared to object to his arrangements. Everyone was very convinced by Zhou Tanhua. Chapter 873. While Zhou Xuanji was arranging the positions of the Emperor Sword Divine Range, the Kunlun Origin Court was already in a heated argument. There was only one topic in all the divine ranges, and that was the position of supremacy. On the sovereign list, Zhou Xuanji sat firmly at the top. He had not lost to any other geniuses on the list. Zhou Xuanji is really going to become the sovereign. I heard that the 12 Law ancestors all went to visit him. When they came out, they were talking and laughing. Isn't that how it should be? Is his cultivation strong enough? It is said that becoming a supreme doesn't just depend on one's own cultivation. The Origin Court will grant you the supreme power. Come on! If the Origin Court had such power, it would have been used long ago. The sovereign divine ranges have already acknowledged him. After all, Zhou Xuanji has 2 sovereigns as his backing. Zhou Xuanji's name once again became a name that was passed down by everyone. Half a month later, the Origin Court made a public announcement, officially electing Zhou Xuanji as the current sovereign. This news was earth-shattering. All living beings rejoiced. This also meant that the dark period that had lasted for a long time had officially ended. 3 years later, at the peak of the Origin Court, Zhou Xuanji would be crowned as the sovereign with the title of Sword Emperor. The Sword Emperor had once brought terror to the Kunlun Origin Court, so Zhou Xuanji wanted to use the name of the Sword Emperor to protect all creatures and restore the Sword Emperor's reputation. Just like that, the name of the Sword Emperor spread through the mouths of all living beings. Zhou Xuanji officially became the Sword Emperor, the Sword Emperor who reigned above all worlds. Time flew by. 2 years later, Zhou Xuanji came out of closed-door cultivation, and one of the 12 law ancestors, Senior Mei, was waiting outside the cultivation palace. Senior Plum immediately cupped his fists and bowed as soon as he saw him. "Greetings, Supreme Elder," Senior Plum said with a smile. She seemed very enthusiastic. Zhou Xuanji walked up to him and smiled as he asked, "Why have you come, Senior?" I don't dare. I hope that the Supreme One will not call me Senior in the future," Senior Plum said in fear and trepidation. He knew clearly that Zhou Xuanji was just being courteous and did not really revere him. With Zhou Xuanji's current strength, he was really not a match for him. Zhou Xuanji nodded and continued to ask, "What is it?" Senior Plum immediately replied. It turned out that the Supreme Palace built for him by the Origin Court had already been built. It was located at the peak of the Origin Court, an independent space that belonged to the highest position of the Kunlun Origin Court. The spiritual energy and Tao energy of the entire Kunlun Origin Court, and the myriad realms would flow into it, and then flow to the various realms to realize the heavenly cycle. "Then lead the way. I'll go take a look," Zhou Xuanji muttered. He originally wanted to teach Zhou Tanhua cultivation, but now he had become interested in the sovereign plane. Senior Plum immediately led the way. The 2 of them moved out and quickly flew upwards. "By the way, Sovereign, have you seen Sovereign Kong Sheng again? We originally wanted to invite him to participate in your ascension ceremony, but in the end, we discovered that his independent plane had already been destroyed. Where did he go?" Senior Plum asked curiously. Sovereign Kong Sheng was a sovereign after all. If they could rope him in, or even have him assist Zhou Xuanji, it would be a blessing for the Kunlun Origin Court. Zhou Xuanji glanced at him and said, "Sovereign Kong Sheng is dead." Senior Mei's eyes widened when he heard this, and he said in a trembling voice, "How is that possible? He is a supreme martial artist." Wait a minute. How did Zhou Xuanji know about this? Could it be that he had teamed up with Little Sovereign? Senior Mei knew that Zhou Xuanji had killed the Sword Emperor and the Darkness Sovereign. Zhou Xuanji definitely did not have much respect for the sovereigns. Recalling Little Sovereign's rage that day, the more he thought about it, the more he felt that it was possible. At that moment, Zhou Xuanji's image in his heart quickly rose. Next, Senior Mei became respectful. He didn't dare to speak rashly anymore. They didn't speak along the way. They passed through the spatial wall and arrived at the sovereign plane. This place was filled with clouds and mist. The blue sky was high and vast. In front of them was a towering, sword-like mountain. The mountain was hundreds of thousands of meters high and had a majestic aura. At the top of the mountain stood a magnificent palace. 2 giant swords stood in front of the gate. This palace was built with Tao stones that are hundreds of millions of years old. You can cultivate at any time while living in it. Even if you rest, your cultivation will continue to improve. A virtuous demonstration array has been set up in the Sea of Clouds. When you move in, no one can break in without your permission. Senior Mei began introducing the sovereign plane to Zhou Xuanji. His tone was full of pride. This world also had his share of effort, and he was very satisfied with it. Zhou Xuanji nodded. Suddenly, 2 exterminating divine light burst out from his eyes. Swoosh! The exterminating divine light swept across, shocking Senior May. A loud bang resounded. A light blue light curtain appeared out of thin air, covering the entire mountain and blocking the exterminating divine light. The entire mountain shook violently, making Senior May shudder in fear. He wanted to say something but stopped on second thought. Fortunately, Zhou Xuanji's exterminating divine light dissipated in time. Not bad, Zhou Xuanji said with a satisfied smile. After that he flew forward. Senior May, who was originally worried, immediately beamed with joy and hurriedly followed. In the universe filled with white light, Shen Yinxing was moving quickly. Her eyes were cold as she locked her gaze ahead. She saw a green light speeding ahead, making it impossible for her to catch up. Don't chase anymore. It's impossible for you to catch up with me. A female voice came from the green light, full of anger. Shen Yinxing let out a cold snort. She ignored it and continued to chase at full speed. The two chased each other. Soon, they rushed out of the white light space and came to a vast starry sky. Countless creatures were fighting in front of them. They were all over the starry sky. The scale was huge, and there were corpses everywhere. Shen Yinxing and the green light directly passed through the battlefield. In an instant, all the creatures and stars were directly shattered, turning into flying ashes. The space was also shattered. Spiritual chi poured into the cracks, taking away countless flying ashes. Such a scene had happened before. In order to chase the green light, Shen Yinxing had destroyed countless planes. Let's see who will stop first, Shen Yinxing said with a cold smile. As she spoke, she licked her lips. Even though she looked like a young girl, she still gave people a very evil feeling. When the green light heard this, it flew even faster, gradually distancing itself from Shen Yinxing. Shen Yinxing frowned. She didn't expect the other party to be able to accelerate. At this moment, a huge black vortex appeared in front of them. It swallowed the turbulence of time and space. It was extremely terrifying. A big black hand reached out and grabbed the green light before putting it into the black vortex. Shen Yinxing stopped in fright. She looked at the black vortex vigilantly and asked in a deep voice, "Who are you?" This black vortex appeared so suddenly that she couldn't see through it. There seemed to be countless demons hidden in the darkness. It was very terrifying. After a while, a hoarse voice came from the black vortex. "Little girl, I advise you not to create a massacre. You have attracted the attention of many immortal existences. Although you are strong, you are not the strongest." Shen Yinxing's eyebrows furrowed even tighter. She asked him politely, "You're talking nonsense. Get out now. Let me see what kind of immortal existence you are." She had a magical ability to escape. Even if she was no match, she could still escape. This was her arrogance. Chapter 874. Humph. A girl who doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. The hoarse voice coldly snorted. As soon as the voice fell, the surrounding space-time turbulence began to riot. Shen Yinxing didn't panic at all. Instead, she sneered and said, "Can you stop talking nonsense? If you don't want to offend me, hand over that guy. I will definitely eat her." She raised her hands, causing the surrounding space-time to fluctuate visibly. In the blink of an eye, the entire space-time turbulence was wantonly twisting like countless water dragons surging. The scene was very spectacular. The black vortex suddenly shrank and quickly turned into a black ball with a diameter of only 6 feet. It was flashing with a faint red light. A figure emerged from the surface of the black ball. It was an old man with disheveled hair. He looked like a ferocious ghost. His expression was horrifying. His eyes were full of stones, making people shudder. Upon seeing him, Shen Yinxing couldn't help but frown. She asked in a deep voice, "Are you the legendary Black Demon Xian ancestor?" Black Demon Xian ancestor. As soon as she thought of this person, she didn't dare to be arrogant anymore. "Little girl, since you know my name, do you still want to eat her?" Black Demon Xian ancestor looked at Shen Yinxing coldly and asked in a cold voice. His voice was so hoarse, filled with endless killing intent. Shen Yinxing suddenly laughed and said, "Well, I admit defeat." After saying that, she turned around and left, quickly disappearing into the space-time turbulence. Black demon Xian ancestor stood on the black ball. He raised his right hand, and the green light appeared in his hand. He murmured, "What is the origin of that girl? She is hunting grand sovereigns everywhere. Is she related to that person?" His expression became solemn. He pondered for a while and finally chose to leave. The black ball shrank and disappeared into thin air with him. As soon as he left, Shen Nianxing appeared in his previous position. "Humph, black demon Xian ancestor. Do you really think I am afraid of you? I happen to be looking for you. As long as I refine you, I will be able to transform. At that time, I will devour the soul source and surpass Grand Sovereign." Shen Nianxing excitedly muttered to herself. She shook her body and disappeared. Kunlun Origin Court Sovereign Plain. Zhou Xuanji was sitting on the golden throne. Behind him, there were countless huge barriers coiling around him. He looked majestic and domineering. The hall was wide and was filled with immortal mist. Then giant pillars emerged from the mist, rushing into the clouds above. The air of an immortal, the lofty sentiments of a supreme being. Senior Mei stood in the hall and rubbed his hands. He asked with a smile, "How do you feel, Sovereign?" Zhou Xuanji nodded in satisfaction and said with a smile, "I can sense endless Tao energy flowing toward me. This feeling is very good. I'm very satisfied with this palace. I will reward you in the future." A supreme being was the faith of all living beings. Once he became a supreme being, a single word from him would be enough to abolish the 12 law ancestors, and no one would dare to object. "Only I am supreme." This was a grand supreme. When Senior Mei heard this, she couldn't help beaming with joy. He rolled his eyes and said, "Why don't you rest here first? I'll go back and prepare for the ascension with the other ancestors. We can't be careless about this. We will definitely make this the greatest event of the Kunlun Origin Court, and let the name of the Sword Emperor spread throughout the world, forever engraved in the river of history." Zhou Xuanji nodded, and Senior Mei left immediately. After his aura completely disappeared, Zhou Xuanji closed his eyes. He began to comprehend the laws of the mortal world that he had obtained earlier. The Origin Fusion Divine Lord was already superior to most living beings, but he was still far from being comparable to a Grand Supreme. He wanted to become stronger. At least before the next time he met Shen Nianxing, he had to have the power to protect himself. He took out the Lesser Supreme Sword, making it hover beside him. Little Sovereign's soul flew out as well. TSK, this place is really magnificent. It's even more magnificent than my Supreme Palace," Little Sovereign exclaimed. Little Sovereign sighed with a face full of envy. Zhou Xuanji asked without opening his eyes, "Do you want to be resurrected?" He also had the help of the souls of 9 powerful cultivators. All of them had been resurrected and reincarnated by him. Now they were wandering around the world. He had always been grateful to Little Sovereign. Therefore he was willing to resurrect Little Sovereign. Little Sovereign's eyes immediately lit up when he heard this. But the next second his eyes dimmed again. "Humph. I will not be resurrected. Once I am resurrected, how long will it take for me to cultivate again? I might as well follow you like this. I believe that you will surpass all the other sovereigns. Maybe you will have the ability to resurrect me and restore me to my peak state," Little Sovereign said with a proud smile. Little Sovereign smiled proudly. His expression was as annoying as ever. Zhou Xuanji opened one eye, glanced at him, and asked curiously, "Do you really have that kind of ability?" Little Sovereign was a genuine Grand Sovereign. It wasn't easy to resurrect him, let alone directly raise his cultivation to the pinnacle. Wasn't that too difficult? As long as you dare to think about it, it may not be impossible, Little Sovereign said with a smile. There was some expectation in his eyes. He once heard his master say that the end of cultivation was omnipotent. The mind could transform everything. As long as one thought about it, anything could come true. Zhou Xuanji began to look forward to it. If it was really as Little Sovereign said, what kind of realm would it be? But then again, your little wife seems to have obtained the inheritance of an immortal existence. She can even hunt great sovereigns. This is incredible. You must be careful. She is no longer the same as before, Little Sovereign said in a solemn tone. His tone suddenly changed as he spoke in a solemn tone. He shuddered at the thought of his soul being scattered by Shen Yinxing. The little girl from back then had already become a great evil demon. She could even threaten his life. Zhou Xuanji asked doubtfully. How strong is she? Compared to you, who is stronger? Little Sovereign glared at him and said in a bad mood. My cultivation is not my greatest strength. My knowledge, my experience, my calmness, my wisdom, these are... She is stronger than you? I already said it. I rely on my wisdom. You are weaker than her. Okay. Little Sovereign was rendered speechless by Zhou Xuanji's retort. Zhou Xuanji was even more curious about Shen Yinxing's experience. How did the once unreliable lass get to where she was today? Just as the two were chatting, the Void Boundary Palace made another move. Zhou Fa flew out of the Kunlun Origin Court, with 6 Void Boundary Heavenly Sovereigns, and headed toward the Lower Realms universe. Where do you want to go? A cold voice came, startling Zhou Fa. He immediately stopped and looked around. He saw a figure descend. Surprisingly, it was Beast Sovereign. Beast Sovereign's face was expressionless as he said, Zhou Fa, it's time for us to settle our grievances. If you don't resist, this sovereign will make you feel better. Seeing that it was him, Zhou Fa smiled disdainfully and said, I was wondering who it was. It turns out to be the famous Super Range Master, Beast Sovereign. How is your Evil Sky Divine Range now? Has it become a Sovereign Divine Range? The Void Boundary Heavenly Sovereigns became nervous. They had grown up listening to Beast Sovereign's prestige. They were naturally afraid. Beast Sovereign let out a cold snort. He then stretched out his hand and grabbed Zhou Fa from a distance. Zhou Fa's expression drastically changed. His body flew uncontrollably toward Beast Sovereign. Previously, he even wanted to harm the Emperor Sword Divine Range. In such a situation, Zhou Xuanji couldn't persuade Beast Sovereign at all. Everyone had their own fate. He couldn't care less. Right now, he had yet to truly become a supreme being. After thinking about it, Zhou Xuanji slowly closed his eyes and continued to comprehend the rules of the mortal world. Recently, he had a deep understanding of the rules of the mortal world. Somehow, he had already touched the realm above the Origin Fusion Divine Lord. He had once asked Little Supreme how to break through to the Grand Supreme Realm by himself. Little Sovereign answered. He needed the guidance of Supreme Force. Every generation's Supreme Being would leave behind a strand of Supreme Being's power for generations to fuse with. This would allow the Supreme Beings of the later generations to have a better foundation. Logically speaking, the higher the level, the stronger the Supremes should be. But the environment was the biggest factor that determined one's strength. The worse the era, the stronger the Supremes born. In the blink of an eye, the day of the Sovereign's ascension had finally arrived. Zhou Xuanji stood on the top of the mountain. Behind him was a dense immortal mist that blotted out the sky. The 12 Law ancestors were kneeling in the void below the Sovereign's plane. Below them was the Kunlun Origin Court. Tens of millions of Origin Court divine soldiers were kneeling before the 12 Law ancestors. Every inferior divine soldier's face was filled with fanaticism. It was a great honor for them to be able to witness the ascension of the Sovereign with their own eyes. At the same time, close to 10,000 divine ranges were silent. Countless living beings were raising their heads in anticipation. All the creatures could see Zhou Xuanji's majestic figure when they looked up. This scene was created by the Sage Manifestation Array. Inside the Emperor Sword Divine Range, Father's figure is so mighty. How did he do it? Does he already have the strength of a sovereign? Zhou Xiaoxian asked excitedly. Zhou Xuanji had been away for some time. She thought that he had broken through again. The others standing on the hillside had the same thought. Xiao Jinghong sighed in amazement. Revered teacher is indeed revered teacher. I thought that my breakthroughs outside were already big enough, but compared to him, it's nothing. His face was filled with admiration. Zhao Tsongjian, Lin Changge, Ning Zifeng, Chen Bantian, Meng Tianlang, and the others were the same. They were all excitedly discussing Zhou Xuanji's strength. Jiang Shui looked up with a smile. She had been looking forward to this day for a long time. When it really came, she realized that she wasn't too excited. Instead, she felt that everything was reasonable. He deserved all of this. Today is the grand event of the Kunlun Origin Court that only happens once in a billion years. The new sovereign is about to ascend. A law ancestor's voice resounded across the entire Kunlun Origin Court. His voice was so majestic and awe-inspiring. Sword Emperor Zhou Xuanji was born in a mortal world. His starting point was lower than all living beings in the Kunlun Origin Court. But with his extraordinary aptitude, he became the sovereign in less than 2,000 years. Ever since he entered the Kunlun Origin Court, he showed his brilliance and soared into the sky. The law ancestor began talking about Zhou Xuanji's past. His voice was full of emotion and stirring up the crowd. Everyone's blood boiled as they listened. They couldn't hold back their excitement. All kinds of phenomenons bloomed at the top of the Kunlun Origin Court. Zhou Xuanji stood before the cliff. Listening to the law ancestor's voice, a smile appeared on his face. The sovereign's position, he really did it. Once upon a time, he even fantasized about what he would see if he became the sovereign. Now he saw it. All living beings bowed down to him. Everything was under his feet. Rumble. The Tao energy in the sovereign's plane began to riot. More accurately, the Tao energy in the entire Kunlun Origin Court was rioting. All of it surged toward the sovereign's plane. Above Zhou Xuanji's head, purple clouds gathered, and an immense pressure descended. A violent gale swept up, stirring up the surrounding celestial mist. Zhou Xuanji looked up. His black hair danced wildly in the wind, covering more than half of his face. He peeked into the purple clouds with his exterminating divine eyes and mumbled, "Could this be the sovereign's power?" The sovereign's power existed everywhere in the Kunlun Origin Court. Was this the reason why the law ancestors couldn't use it? He took out the lesser supreme sword and asked in a low voice, "What should I do?" Little sovereign's soul flew out. As soon as he saw the purple clouds above, he smiled and said, "You don't need to do anything. Just wait for its arrival." A look of relief appeared in his eyes. It could be said that he had watched Zhou Xuanji grow step by step until he became the sovereign today. This was the first time he had seen a junior. He was optimistic about becoming the sovereign. Chapter 876. The technique ancestor's voice was still resounding, solemn and majestic. All living beings were listening carefully. Listening to Zhou Xuanji's growth experience, all of them felt their blood boiling and their fighting spirit soaring. Putting aside his current achievements, who would have thought that Zhou Xuanji would become the sovereign? Zhou Xuanji had written an inspirational story with his own opportunities. For all living beings, this was a story that happened around them. It was very close and very real. Under such a feeling, all living beings had an extreme sense of worship for Zhou Xuanji. Even those geniuses who hated or envied Zhou Xuanji couldn't help but sigh in admiration. The technique ancestor's speech lasted for a long time. The billowing purple sea gathered above Zhou Xuanji's head. Countless purple qi fell like stars and quickly poured into his body, transforming his muscles and bones. Zhou Xuanji accepted the baptism of these purple qi with a smile on his face. Awesome. He could feel that his sovereign divine power was transforming. It wasn't just becoming stronger, but it was changing qualitatively. Faintly, he saw countless figures descending from the purple sea like a group of immortals. It was a very artistic conception. Even Zhou Xuanji couldn't help but immerse himself in it. Little Sovereign, floating behind him, excitedly said, "They're here. They're here." Great Sovereign is also known as Court Realm Lord Great Sovereign. Every 100 million years, a court can only give birth to one Court Realm Lord Great Sovereign. If you were a little later, I'm afraid you would have to wait for 100 million years. And this is a special case. Generally speaking, the sovereign reigns for billions of years. Zhou Xuanji didn't care. His eyes were focused on the purple sea with a calm expression. Those sovereign divine shadows drilled into his mind. In an instant, his consciousness exploded. Purple halos flew out of his body, wrapped around him, and quickly circled around him. The origin of battle, the will is firm, indestructible, indelible, the will transforms into God. The origin of time, the past and the future are close at hand. Invert time and space, and only respect one's heart. The origin of radius, the stars revolve. 10,000 worlds are a square. The vertical is a circle, the radius and the circle are one. The origin of change, the body turns into all things, all sources obey. One change, one source, one grace. Different majestic voices exploded in Zhou Xuanji's mind, one after another. Past sovereigns. He heard the voices of Little Sovereign, Sovereign Kong Sheng, Sovereign Darkness and Sovereign Wu Zhou. The Supremes were all talking about their own origin laws in unison. At first, Zhou Xuanji only felt that it was very noisy, but he soon entered a state of enlightenment. The ruler of the court realm was a grand autarch. The ruler of a court, and the 3,000 origin laws were at his disposal. At the same time, the laws of the myriad realms of the Kunlun origin court rushed toward the supreme plane. The Tao energy that had drilled into Zhou Xuanji's body was assimilated and turned into sovereign divine energy. Then, it overflowed from all his pores and flew out of the sovereign plane, landing in the Kunlun origin court and turning into brand new rules. This was a kind of good fortune, using the transformation of the laws to control the Kunlun origin court. The ascension of the supreme martial artist has officially begun. The Sword Emperor will transform into a supreme martial artist. Everyone should celebrate together. The ancestor of technique raised his voice. Like thunder, it bombarded everyone's ears. Countless golden lotuses floated down from the Paragon Plain and landed on the various divine ranges. With the Kunlun origin court taking the lead, the spiritual energy of all the great heavens realms began to surge. The spiritual energy was boiling, and his Tao energy was increasing wildly. Everyone was pleasantly surprised, and they all shouted the Sword Emperor's name. Sword Emperor! Long live Sword Emperor! Supreme Sword Emperor! Sword Emperor! Sword Emperor! All the creatures of the various divine ranges were shouting the Sword Emperor's name. They gathered together, as if they wanted to overturn the sky of each divine range. 3,000 origin laws were manifesting to celebrate the Sword Emperor. This day would be the most joyous day in the past 100 million years. At the border of the Kunlun origin court, in the void, Beast Sovereign and Zhou Fa looked up at Zhou Xuanji's majestic figure. They were silent for a long time. After a long time, Beast Sovereign had a complicated look on his face as he murmured, "He really succeeded." At this moment, his heart was filled with regret. If he had desperately cultivated Zhou Xuanji instead of Origin Court War God, perhaps his current situation would be completely different. The Evil Sky Divine Range might still exist, or even be stronger. After all, even the Emperor Sword Divine Range still existed, and its power was growing day by day. It's useless to regret. We no longer have a foothold in this court. Let's retreat, Zhou Fa said, shaking his head. Zhou Fa shook his head. He appeared calmer than Beast Sovereign. What was done could not be undone. Instead of regretting here, it was better to plan for the future. Beast Sovereign nodded, and the two turned around. He took out a scroll inlaid with red jade, and waved it forward. Space fluctuated as a crack appeared. The two stepped into it one after another. The crack disappeared as if it had never appeared. On the other side, Beast Sovereign and Zhou Fa shuttled through the dark void. A ball of light was suspended above their heads, like a small sun, illuminating the void within a radius of 100 feet. At the same time, they were vigilant of their surroundings. We have to be careful after leaving the Kunlun Origin Court. There are many unknown existences lurking in the darkness. You may be swallowed by them before you can even see their appearance, Zhou Fa reminded. At the same time, he took out a sword, ready to fight at any time. It wasn't the first time he had come outside the Kunlun Origin Court. He was very scared every time he came. Beast Sovereign didn't answer, but his eyes were very sharp. He was vigilant in all directions. The two moved forward at full speed. After an unknown period of time, a light appeared in front of them. Zhou Fa heaved a long sigh and said, "Finally, we are leaving this damn ghost domain. Next is..." Before he could finish his words, terrifying shadows that resembled dragons and flood dragons suddenly appeared from the darkness 1,000 feet away, surrounding them tightly. The two immediately stopped in fright. "What are these things?" Beast Sovereign cried out in horror. The aura of these shadows was very terrifying. It made his hair stand on end. Zhou Fa gritted his teeth and replied, I don't know. Damn it. He felt that his luck was really bad. He was besieged as soon as he came out. Are you from the Kunlun Origin Court? A cold voice came from above, startling them and making them look up. They couldn't see anything in the endless darkness. Who are you? Zhou Fa asked in a loud voice. His voice was trembling. He was obviously very scared. He was pretending to be calm. Bring me to the Kunlun Origin Court, or else you will die here. The cold voice sounded again. A soul-freezing killing intent locked onto Beast Sovereign and Zhou Fa. They didn't dare to refuse. Sovereign plain. Zhou Xuanji was still enjoying the sovereign's inheritance. The preaching of the sovereigns and the sovereign's divine power had made a qualitative change in his cultivation. In terms of his own sovereign's divine power, it was more than 10 times stronger than before. The sovereign's inheritance wasn't an infusion of wisdom. It was a kind of traction that led his sovereign's divine power to transform. He was getting closer and closer to the true sovereign. Relax your body. Let your extermination immortal physique reach its most comfortable state. Don't offset it. Little sovereign's voice came from behind. Zhou Xuanji immediately did as he was told. The next moment, he was pleasantly surprised to find that the growth rate of the sovereign's divine power had begun to accelerate. Chapter 877. Boom! In the sovereign plain, the mountains shook, and the celestial mist billowed. Zhou Xuanji stood on the edge of the cliff. A powerful gale surrounded his body, forming a majestic tornado that swept away the clouds. His aura continued to rise, like a hot knife cutting through butter, unable to be stopped. The 12 ancestors, who were closest to the sovereign plain, looked up. They were pleasantly surprised. So fast. So powerful. He can accept the sovereign's power so quickly. Seems like he will become a true sovereign soon. Kunlun Origin Court will welcome a new era. I think he will become the most powerful sovereign in history. The 12 ancestors discussed among themselves. They were all full of confidence in Zhou Xuanji. Since ancient times, very few sovereigns had the same experience as Zhou Xuanji. Moreover, Zhou Xuanji had connections with several sovereigns. Such talent and luck were rare. Senior Mei smiled and said, It's time to promote the Emperor Sword Divine Range. Before the sovereign gives the order, we should take action. The other ancestors nodded. They did not hate the Emperor Sword Divine Range at all. Since the Emperor Sword Divine Range was established, other than Zhou Xuanji's wife, the other disciples had never caused trouble. Even after Zhou Xuanji became the first candidate to become the sovereign, they rarely left the divine range. All of them were cultivating diligently. Such a divine range was the favorite of the ancestors. After all, the Kunlun Origin Court needed a large number of powerful cultivators to deal with the previous predicament. Immediately, an ancestor left to arrange the promotion of the Emperor Sword Divine Range. Zhou Xuanji was reborn. Everyone rejoiced. This kind of life lasted for several decades. This day, a majestic aura engulfed the entire Kunlun Origin Court. I, Zhou Xuanji, have been recognized by all sovereigns, and have officially become a great sovereign of the court realm. My title is the Sword Emperor. I will protect the Kunlun Origin Court with all my power. I will help the Kunlun Origin Court surpass history and create an unprecedented era. Zhou Xuanji's voice resounded across the world like a great bell, shaking everyone's soul. The peaceful Kunlun Origin Court was in a great commotion again. At the same time, the sword spirit's voice resounded in Zhou Xuanji's mind. Analyze that the sword owner has reached the great sovereign of the court realm. Gotcha begins. Ding! Congratulations. The sword owner has obtained the soul of court toppling origin, Kunlun sword battle body explosion. Zhou Xuanji slowly opened his eyes. The violet light in his eyes made his eyes look like purple gems, mysterious and majestic. The ruler of the court realm was a grand autarch, grand supreme being. His supreme god force had already transformed. Compared to before he broke through, he felt that he was more than 10,000 times stronger. His exterminating divine eyes had also transformed. With a casual glance, His eyesight could penetrate the walls of space. The unprecedented power did not inflate his heart. Instead, he was very calm. "This is a grand sovereign," Zhou Xuanji mumbled to himself with a slight smile. Information about the Soul Kunlun sword appeared before his eyes. Sword name: Soul Kunlun sword level. Court toppling description: this sword was created by the soul origin of the Kunlun Origin Court's Supreme Sword Emperor. Using the soul origin to power this sword, it possesses a terrifying sword power that can destroy an origin court. To use this sword, one needs to be the ruler of the court realm, Great Supreme Realm. Ding! Since the host has obtained the court-toppling divine sword, the divine sword's level will be updated. The sword spirit's voice came again, and Zhou Xuanji raised his brow. Another update. It seemed that the supreme legendary sword system was also continuously growing stronger. After that, he activated his inherited battle physique. A wave of memories flowed into his mind. This was a secret technique that could stimulate the potential of one's body, allowing one's power to increase explosively for a short period of time. This secret technique was extremely demanding on one's body. The stronger one's body, the greater the increase. Such a secret technique was very easy for the current Zhou Xuanji to master. He did not move his body. He easily learned it with his divine will. He did not try it. With his current ability, once he activated his supreme god force, this sovereign plane would most likely shatter into pieces. He changed into a brand new purple robe. The robe was embroidered with numerous legendary swords, forming the pattern of a divine steed. Then, he put on the Sword Emperor divine crown. His entire aura changed suddenly. At this moment, his aura was no weaker than Sovereign Wu Zhou's. He directly teleported into the palace and sat on his golden throne. "Come in," he said softly. As the sound of his voice faded, the 12 ancestors of technique appeared in the palace. The technique ancestors were stunned. They had just heard Zhou Xuanji's voice, and before they could react, they were teleported in by a mysterious force. So powerful, they looked up and felt deep veneration for Zhou Xuanji, who was high above them. They came back to their senses and knelt down. "Greetings, Sovereign." The 12 technique ancestors cupped their fists and said in unison. Zhou Xuanji said softly, "Get up. Tell me everything about the Kunlun Origin Court." Having heard this, the technique ancestors got up and began talking about the various rules and powers of the Kunlun Origin Court. This lecture lasted for nearly half a month. The Kunlun Origin Court was too big. The technique ancestors had to take turns to talk about it. Zhou Xuanji did not interrupt and listened quietly. After the technique ancestors finished talking, he grasped all the information about the Kunlun Origin Court. "In the future, you will still be the technique ancestors, and your positions will be second only to me. I need you to pick one person from each divine range to form a god pillar. The god pillar's position is only one level lower than yours. They are on the same level as the range lord. None of the god pillars can be a range lord," Zhou Xuanji said. Hearing this, the 12 technique ancestors' expressions changed drastically. One of them asked cautiously, "Sovereign, what rights do the god pillars have?" Zhou Xuanji looked at him and said calmly, "They represent the divine range, and talk to me directly. Their positions in the divine range are on the same level as the range lord. They can only be executed if I give the order. At the same time, the god pillars cannot interfere with the management of the divine range. They can only advise them." The technique ancestors' eyelids twitched wildly. Decentralization. This was to suppress all the divine ranges. They thought about it and realized that this was a good thing. Each divine range had someone who could restrain the range lord. For the 12 technique ancestors, it was more beneficial than harmful. For example, Beast Sovereign dared to order the Evil Sky divine range to defy the Origin Court. If the god pillars were present, the range lord's every move would be transmitted to Zhou Xuanji. As for whether the god pillars would be on the same side as the range lord, the probability was too low. After all, the technique ancestors were the ones who decided the god pillars. As long as they had brains, they would not choose someone who was on the same side as the range lord. Also, the great elimination will continue. But I want you to send people to investigate the details of each venue. You can't achieve absolute fairness, but you have to be as fair as possible, Zhou Xuanji continued. After that, he told them about the other plans he had in mind. What he mentioned was the overall situation of the Kunlun Origin Court. He did not mention the Emperor Sword Divine Range. The technique ancestors admired him in their hearts. Only such a sovereign was trustworthy. No matter what, for now, Zhou Xuanji really hoped that the Kunlun Origin Court would be better. His decision was also good for all living beings. Xian Xianghua smiled and said, I'm thinking about the position of the godly pillar. Hearing this, Zhou Xiaoxian was speechless, and Jiang Shui could not help but laugh. Aunt Xian, it seems that you are very dissatisfied with your son being the branch master. Zhou Xiaoxian winked and smiled provocatively. Jiang Shui glared at her and snappily said, Will you only be happy when you go into closed-door cultivation for 100 years? Zhou Xiaoxian was terrified when she heard that. She was most afraid of boring seclusion. She had to rest from time to time during her cultivation. This was also the biggest reason why she was surpassed by Zhou Tanhua. Zhou Tanhua was completely different from her. He loved to cultivate alone. Unless he encountered trouble in cultivation, he would rarely take the initiative to leave the place of cultivation. Of course not. There are only a few Origin Fusion Divine Lords in the Emperor Sword Divine Range. Naturally, I won't decline, Xian Xianghua said, curling her lips. She didn't have any thoughts of scheming against him. She just wanted to make a name for herself. Even if she couldn't become the first in the Kunlun Origin Court, she wanted to be the second. Jiang Shui smiled and said, You should cultivate well. Don't go out and cause trouble for him. Maybe you can even become the sovereign in the future. Xian Xianghua slightly furrowed her brow. She asked in surprise, Why do you say that? She could hear the deeper meaning in Jiang Shui's tone. You still don't know him? When did he stay in one place for a long time? Jiang Shui shook her head and said with a smile. She still remembered that Zhou Xuanji had told her about Sovereign Wu Zhou. In her opinion, the seed of leaving the Kunlun Origin Court had already taken root and sprouted in Zhou Xuanji's heart. Xian Xianghua thoughtfully murmured, In that case, I won't be a god pillar anymore. I have to cultivate in seclusion. I can't fall behind too much. She wanted to follow Zhou Xuanji more than make a name for herself. She couldn't imagine what dangers there were outside the Kunlun Origin Court. Only by following him could she feel at ease. At the same time, she was also looking forward to more exciting experiences. What are you thinking? I just became the sovereign, and you are already looking forward to my downfall? Zhou Xuanji's voice suddenly drifted over, startling the three women. They saw Zhou Xuanji slowly walking down from the sky. His purple robe was fluttering in the wind. He had an imposing appearance, fully displaying the aura of a sovereign. Father! Zhou Xiaoxian stood up excitedly. She looked at Zhou Xuanji. The more she looked, the more excited she became. After not seeing him for so long, she felt that her father seemed to have changed into a different person. Who would dare to question whether Zhou Xuanji was worthy of being the sovereign now? Jiang Shui and Xian Xianghua were even more dazzled. This was their man. The person with the highest status in the Kunlun Origin Court. Zhou Xuanji walked up to Zhou Xiaoxian and rubbed her head. Then he walked up to Jiang Shui and Xian Xianghua and opened his arms. The two women immediately jumped into his embrace. With his wife and daughter by his side, Zhou Xuanji smiled happily. Only in this moment did he feel real. Don't worry, no matter where I go, I will take you with me. It was like this in the past, now, and in the future, Zhou Xuanji said with a gentle smile. Zhou Xuanji said with a gentle smile, and the two girls smiled happily. Zhou Xiaoxian came up to his side and curled her lips, asking, Father, I thought you had forgotten about us. She pretended to be unhappy, but the excitement in her eyes couldn't be concealed. Zhou Xuanji chuckled and said, I came back to pick up your mother and Aunt Xian. As for you, stay in the Emperor Sword Divine Range and cultivate well. Having heard this, Zhou Xiaoxian immediately put on a sad face. Zhou Xuanji immediately understood that she was acting. He just smiled and didn't say anything. After that, he pulled the two women to sit down and talked about the recent situation of the Emperor's Sword Divine Range. Since he became the sovereign, the 12 law ancestors and many divine ranges sent gifts one after another. This caused the spiritual chi in the Emperor's Sword Divine Range to grow continuously. The environment was getting better and better. The resources that the disciples could receive had also increased exponentially. With Zhou Xuanji in the lead, the disciples were all working hard to cultivate. Their cultivation was constantly improving. Ren Niming became the first person to break through to Origin Fusion Divine Lord after Xian Xianghua and Zhou Tanhua. This guy was the incarnation of destiny. After joining Zhou Xuanji's banner, his destiny was connected to Zhou Xuanji's. And Zhou Xuanji was the sole sovereign, which made his cultivation soar. Fortunately, this guy didn't get arrogant. He was still loyal to the Emperor's Sword Divine Range. In addition, the number of 9 vast heavens and Tao ancestors was also increasing rapidly. They were bound together for good or bad. After Zhou Xuanji became the sovereign, the destiny of all the disciples of the Emperor's Sword Divine Range had also improved by leaps and bounds. It could be said that when a man achieves the Tao, even his chickens and dogs rise to heaven. Chapter 879. The news of Zhou Xuanji's return to the Emperor's Sword Divine Range didn't spread. The Emperor's Sword Divine Range was also in harmony. The disciples still didn't know that Zhou Xuanji was back. The reason for this was that Zhou Xuanji didn't want to cause trouble. Not to mention that his home wasn't just the Emperor's Sword Divine Range, but the entire Kunlun Origin Court. 10 years passed just like that. During these 10 years, he taught his children to cultivate. He didn't interfere in the affairs of the Emperor's Sword Divine Range. Occasionally, he would give advice to Zhou Tanhua. On this day, Zhou Xuanji was about to leave with Jiang Shui and Xian Xianghua. Before leaving, he looked at Zhou Tanhua and asked curiously, "Are you going to keep this form?" After so long, Zhou Tanhua still maintained his youthful appearance. Although this appearance was very pleasing, Zhou Xuanji felt that he should have the spirit and appearance of a boy. The appearance is not important. What's important is the heart. I can change into the appearance of a normal man at any time, but I don't think it's necessary, Zhou Tanhua said with a smile. Zhou Tanhua said with a faint smile. He seemed to be even calmer than Zhou Xuanji. Zhou Xuanji's calmness was sharp. On the other hand, Zhou Tanhua seemed approachable. It was easy for people to feel close to him. He looks good just like this. Zhou Xiaoxian rubbed Zhou Tanhua's head and chuckled. It was precisely because of Zhou Tanhua's appearance that she often teased him. After so many years, it was the same every time they met. In her eyes, Zhou Tanhua was a younger brother who would never grow up. But in the eyes of others, she was the one who would never grow up. She was more like a younger sister. Zhou Xuanji shook his head and said with a smile, "After we leave, you have to support each other. After all, you are brother and sister. Apart from us, there is no one closer to you. Understand? Don't give up on each other at any time." Zhou Tanhua nodded while Zhou Xiaoxian curled her lips. Okay, you speak as if we are going to part forever," Zhou Xiaoxian said, waving her hand. She pretended to be impatient. But in fact she felt wronged. She had never bid farewell like this in her life. She tried to comfort herself that she had already grown up. Jiang Shui looked at Zhou Xiaoxian and felt very distressed. But she understood that her daughter had grown up. She should let her grow up. Zhou Xuanji looked at Zhou Xiaoxian and said with a smile, "Okay, I will wait for you up there. I look forward to you finding me with your own ability." With that, he waved his right hand and disappeared with Jiang Shui and Xian Xianghua. Zhou Xiaoxian looked up. Through the sky of the Emperor's Sword Divine Range, she seemed to see the peak of the Origin Court. Cultivate well. Zhou Tanhua patted her on the shoulder and comforted her. Then he turned around and left. Hearing this, Zhou Xiaoxian came back to her senses and hurriedly turned around to chase after him. "Stinky little brother, what are you talking about? Is my cultivation weak?" Sovereign Plain. Zhou Xuanji and the others landed on the summit. Jiang Shui and Xian Xianghua observed their surroundings, and they were all stunned. This place is so beautiful. This world belongs to me. You can go wherever you want and create whatever you want. Zhou Xuanji said with a smile. With a wave of his right hand, the doors of the Supreme Palace opened. The two women looked at each other and immediately flew in different directions. They wanted to take a look at the Supreme Plane first. The Supreme Plane didn't have a fixed boundary, and it could be continuously expanded. There were many natural treasures here, and it contained almost all the resources of the Kunlun origin court. This was all thanks to the 12 ancestors. Zhou Xuanji smiled and walked into the palace alone. He was going to continue studying the rules of the mortal world. In the mortal plane, Sovereign Mortal World was meditating in the sea of fog. Strands of soul shadows coiled around her like a group of dancing ghosts. It was very strange. Since parting with Zhou Xuanji, she had been focusing on cultivating the rules of the soul. Although it wasn't a leap forward, it was still a great epiphany. Suddenly, she opened her eyes and said with a calm look, "Come out." Just as she spoke, a spatial crack appeared in front of her, and a figure stepped out. It was Zhou Fa. Looking at Zhou Fa, who looked exactly like Zhou Xuanji, Sovereign Mortal World said with a contemptuous smile, "You dare to come to me, a little ghost who doesn't dare to show his true face?" Zhou Fa looked very nervous facing Sovereign Mortal World. He forced a smile and said, "I came here to ask you a favor. After it's done, you will have the opportunity to break through to the great sovereign realm. You want to read my fortune? I don't dare." Zhou Fa's smile was very unnatural. Cold sweat was dripping from his forehead. Sovereign Mortal World closed her eyes and asked, "What's the matter?" Zhou Fa replied, "It's like this. There is a big opportunity outside the Kunlun origin court. Dozens of great sovereigns will gather there. If you can let the Sword Emperor go, it will be beneficial for both you and the Sword Emperor." Sovereign Mortal World didn't speak and waited for him to continue. Zhou Fa explained slowly. After a long while, Zhou Fa looked up at Sovereign Mortal World and asked, "How is it?" Sovereign Mortal World didn't answer immediately, as if she didn't notice him talking. Zhou Fa wasn't in a hurry either. He waited patiently. "Okay, wait outside the court," Sovereign Mortal World said leisurely. Autarch Crimson Dust said slowly. Zhou Fa immediately bowed and left. She opened her eyes, stood up, and said with a smile, "You have been listening for so long, why don't you show yourself?" A beam of light descended from the sky and landed in front of her. Zhou Xuanji appeared majestically with the Emperor Sword of Life and Death, and a long sword radiating red light floating behind him. This red sword was the Kunlun Soul Sword. "What do you think?" Sovereign Mortal World asked with a smile as she looked at Zhou Xuanji. Zhou Xuanji shook his head and said, "It should be a trap, but I want to take a look. This is a good opportunity to get in touch with the outside world." Zhou Fa said that an ancient great sovereign had invited great sovereigns to meet him with the excuse of a sovereign's opportunity. There was no need to fight. They just wanted to get to know each other and obtain information about the sovereign's opportunity together. If this was said by a great sovereign, Zhou Xuanji might not think too much about it. But the other party sent Zhou Fa. He couldn't help but think too much. "You have just become a great sovereign. Do you want to stabilize yourself for a while?" Sovereign Mortal World asked with concern. She was a little surprised. She couldn't see through Zhou Xuanji's cultivation. This kid gave her a feeling that he was even more mysterious than the Sword Emperor and the Darkness Sovereign. He was like Sovereign Wu Zhou. "It's okay. I can stabilize myself better if I go out and fight," Zhou Xuanji said with a confident smile. Zhou Xuanji smiled confidently. He had already noticed Zhou Fa when he entered the Kunlun origin court. He deliberately let Zhou Fa in to see what tricks this guy had. Sovereign Mortal World nodded and said, "Then I will go with you." Zhou Xuanji raised his hand and said, "No, I have another request." "What is it?" "Teach my 2 wives to cultivate. When I come back, I will share half of the opportunity with you," Zhou Fa said. "TSK, are you afraid that I will drag you down?" "No, I just feel that the Kunlun origin court needs someone to take charge. When the time comes, I will let you control the Divine Demonstration Array." "Yo, you have even mastered the Divine Demonstration Array?" The two began to chat and laugh. They were no longer as distant as before. but they still treated each other with respect. Looking at the current Zhou Xuanji, sovereign mortal world couldn't help but sigh. The feeling of being in Anti-Kunlun had returned. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.